Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, boys and girls. Let me start up the YouTube stream too. Hopefully you can all see me and hopefully you can all hear me. How's the audio, gang? We had some people waiting in the waiting room, and that's odd for me on the YouTube side. I mean, usually don't see that. So thank you for being here. So a small adjustment to today's schedule. Normally, or before. Previously, I was expecting to go live 7 p.m. Eastern today. Okay, that's when we set up the debate for. That's when everyone could make it. And that's still happening, to be clear. We aren't moving that. We aren't changing that. What is changing is I'm going to be going live early now to cover something that happened today. Some breaking news, if you will. Kirsty Noem, Homeland Security guy, the DHS guy, had a press conference today in California. Wouldn't have been eventful, really, except that Senator Padilla, I think that's how you say his name, decided to go and attend, and, well, ended up being thrown to the ground and handcuffed. And we're going to talk about what happened, why it happened, the reactions to it, the spin that's being put on it, and yeah. PL1524 says, "Oh God, Erudite and Soy Pill. Jesus Christwick, why? Do you not like Erudite and Soy Pill?" I like both of these people. Like, to be clear, I don't know Aaron. I've never met the man before, but everyone else on the debate I know, and I'm friends with, or I like at least, right? Not together. You don't like them together. They're on the same team. I don't know if that helps or not. But they are the pro side to the question tonight. So yeah, I don't know. But before we get into all that, let's look at some of the stuff that's been happened today. So I'm gonna show you the clip people have been kind of sending around, and there's a few clips from a few different angles here. Better so you can get the whole view here. Okay, there's a few clips from a few different angles. Okay, and this is just one of them. Okay. Again, this happened at a press conference for the Department of Homeland Security. Kirsty Noem put together a press conference. And here is what happened. Now, I do have some footage before this, but it's from a different angle, and you can't really see what's happening, but you can hear. And we're going to go over that too. But just to set the stage, I think we need to watch this clip. Let's watch the clip, gang. Sound on? Good.
Guys, ready? And balancing. Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your hands off.
How many of our ICE agents have been shot?
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
Bro.
Easy on my hands. Go ahead. Put behind my back.
All right. Cool. Other hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
There's no recording loud out here. I did not know. There's no recording loud out here for FBI, right?
Notice they're not pushing to the ground the guy who's recording that they're not supposed to be recording, right? They're doing it to the guy who asked the question. Wow. That looks bad, gang. That looks really heavy-handed. To be clear, they had him out of the room when they're pushing him to the ground and handcuffing him. He's nowhere near the senator. He's not a threat. They can tell he's not a threat. He's out of the room, and they're forcing him to the ground to handcuff the man. Okay, he's told them who he is. Maybe they don't believe him. I don't know, right? But this is excessive. This is absolutely excessive. Once again, this isn't like something where he had a weapon or he was rushing on stage. Again, he was being pushed. he started speaking, and they grabbed his arm, and they started pushing him. They pushed him back, and they kept pushing and pushing and pushing until he was completely out of the room. Again, because he had a question. Now, let's look at how this is framed by a lot of these people, right? Let's see how Homeland Security frames this event that we just saw. It says this: Senator Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live press conference without identifying himself. He said his name in the first 2 fucking seconds, gang. Okay. Or having his Senate security pin on as he lunged towards Secretary Noem. Let's watch again. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I missed the lunging. Maybe we didn't see the lunging. Let's watch it again. Hey, there he is. No lunge. He's being pushed.
Hands up, hands up.
No lunging. He's trying not to be pushed, but he's being
I
pushed.
have questions for the secretary. Because
They're
the fact of the matter is,
pushing him from the left and the right. Right? They're pushing him from the front and the back. They're getting him out of there. Did you guys see any lunging? I didn't see any lunging. You can see him pushing back. If you're talking about this part, right? Here, let's get back to it. Oh, it's loading. Give it a second, gang. Give it a minute. But he's being pushed from the front and the back. Like, they're pushing him. So he's stumbling into people, but he's not pushing, right? But I'll show you. Oh, here we go. Okay, so no pushing. He's not pushing anyone. They're pushing him. He's not pushing. His hands aren't even on them. He's getting pushed from behind. And they're pushing him from the front. He's leaning into them. I'll give you that. He's absolutely leaning into them, trying not to get pushed. But he's not pushing. He's being pushed and he's being shoved. And he's being manhandled out of there, right? That's clear from the video.
That you're rotating on your
I also want to
hands off.
Was he attention seeking? Yes, but that's not a crime. That's not breaking a law, right? There's no reason to use this amount of force for asking a question. And this claim that he was lunging at the stage, right? That, again, we just read, Homeland Security made. Maybe we could see it from a different angle, right? So I got up the live stream, okay? And this is, I put it a little bit before the incident, right? And let's watch it from this angle, okay? Let's watch. And watch Kirsty Noem here. And let me know if she's acting like someone who is getting lunged at, okay? Because I've been lunged at before. I've been attacked before. I've been punched before. I've been all that before, right? I've been people running up on me before. Watch. See if she acts like someone who's being lunged at would act, okay? Just watch. Here, let me adjust a little bit. Maybe you guys can see it better. Hopefully that does it. We'll see.
And it's just not acceptable. The Department of Homeland Security and the officers and the agencies and the departments and the military people that are working on this operation will continue to sustain and increase our operations in this city. We are not going away. We are staying here to liberate this city from the socialist and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into this city. So I want to say thank you to every single person that has been able to do this. Also, I want to talk specifically to the rioters and to the politicians in Los Angeles.
Doesn't even stop. Again, we can watch it again if you like.
We are staying here to liberate the city from the
after this comment
and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into.
After she says that they're here to liberate the city from the socialist leadership or whatever, right? That's when Padilla, Senator Padilla, interrupts. He has a question. He wants to say something. He has a comment, right? She's just looking. No lunging. Can you see the fear in her eyes? Because I can't, right? And that's when
The city. So I
he
want to
gets
say
pushed,
thank
shoved,
you to
manhandled,
every single
and,
person that has
handcuffed.
been able to do this.
And then we
Also,
can see
I
this,
want to
right?
talk.
This idea that we are okay with a U.S. senator who goes to a public press conference to ask a question and gets treated in the way and manner he does. And remember, one of the first things he says is his name, who he is. And he's not some no-name, no-face. He's a sitting U.S. senator. Especially if you're a member of Homeland Security, you should recognize him. You should know who that motherfucker is. Okay? Right? All Kirsty Noem had to do in this situation, all she had to do, right, was to say, I see my colleague, Senator Padilla, is here to have a question. If he'd allow me to finish my statement, we can maybe have a talk and allow him to have his question after. Please, do we have a seat for Mr. Padilla in the front? That's all she had to do, and we'd be having a totally different conversation. Padilla would look kind of buffoonish, right? Going in and interrupting, right? And he would look bad. But because Noem and her team handled it with such heavy-handed force, where they manhandled him, pushed him, shoved him, and threw him to the ground after he was out, entirely out of the area, right? Threw him to the ground and handcuffed him. Was this a political stunt by Padilla? Probably. But Noem played fucking right into it. When I talk about how the left often plays into Trump's hands, when I talk about how, especially the far left, the violent left, the extreme left, the guys who go around burning cars, breaking windows, that all plays into Trump's narrative. It plays into Trump's hands. They are doing Trump's work for him, right? Because people can see it. People can see the excess of it. People can see the unnecessariness of it. People can see the violence of it. And it plays directly into Trump's hands. Just so, we see Kirsty Noem here, in all her competent glory gang, play directly into Padilla's hands, into the left hands. They are, once again, just making real the narratives that are being spun by the left about him. Oh, a lot of you are here already. The Scorned One says, Wick TV, honestly, I've changed my mind and no longer agree with your political violence stance. Well, you're wrong. You're still wrong. None of this is okay for violence. None. Zero Fuck says, absolutely it was. He could have called her office for any questions, but he went into a room full of cameras for a reason. Yeah, he's a politician, gang. And it's a stunt. That's absolutely true. Hang on, I'm blaming Noem? Yeah! Noem was, or her team at least. Yes. You are allowed to go to a press conference and ask a question. They can kick you out. That's something they can do. But this is far and away excessive force. To handcuff him after he was out? And he told you who he was. He was a U.S. fucking senator. Artemis Fowl says $5. Noem played into Padilla's hands by Check's nose, continuing to give her press conference and not allowing the senator to crash her meeting. What she did was use excessive violent force in order to force that man down and handcuff him, playing into the narrative. And again, for asking a question and then lying, saying he lunged the stage and barged in when we can clearly see that wasn't the case, right? Yes, it absolutely plays into the left's hands. And it keep in mind, we're not talking about riots anymore. We're not seeing anything about riots anymore. That narrative has been totally subsumed by the narrative that has been created because of Noem's incompetence here of violent, oppressive regime handcuffing a senator for asking a question. And you can say, well, that's not what happened. That's what it's looking like, baby. That's what's happened. Oh, no cow Mike barges into the stream. I got a question. Arrest that man. Handcuff him now. And again, you can see from the video, she doesn't look like she's in danger. She doesn't look like she's threatened. She just keeps talking, right? This idea that she's been lunged at or he's barging in or he's crazy. None of that's true. And we can fucking see it. It's on fucking video. Yes, exactly, Raptor Zesty. What did she do? She literally just kept on talking, showing that she was not in danger or didn't felt she was in danger or under threat or any of that. Oh, Cervantes, that was me being joking to No Cow Mike, who was saying that he's barging into a stream. I got a question. That was a joke I was making to No Cow Mike. But obviously, these officers use excessive force. He wasn't arrested. Oh, well, actually, let's look and see what he has to say about the situation. So this is Padilla's shortly after the incident. He went and called a press conference of his own, and he started talking about it. So let's listen to what he has to say, see his perspective. Then I'm pretty sure I got Kirsty Noem's perspective here, and if I don't, I'll find it real quick because she's also talked about it. But let's listen to him, and then let's listen to her, and let's see how this plays out. Let's see the difference here. Cool.
Over the course of recent weeks, several of my colleagues, have been asking the Department of Homeland Security for more information and more answers on their increasingly extreme immigration enforcement actions. And we've gotten little to no information in response to our inquiries. And so I came to the press conference to hear what she had to say, to see if I could learn any new additional information. And at one point, I had a question. And let me emphasize, just as we've emphasized the right for people to peacefully protest and to stand up for their First Amendment.
So I want you to pay attention to this last bit a little because I think it's important to the narrative. If he is to be believed, and keep grain of salt, right? Politicians lie, gang. Crazy, huh? But this is what he says, and I think this is important and worth noting.
The right for people to peacefully...
Hold on.
And at one point, I had a question to see if I could learn press conference, to hear what she had to say, to see if I could learn any new additional information. And at one point, I had a question.
Okay, so what he's saying here is he was at the press conference before he interrupted with his question, and it's only when he interrupted with his question, at one point he has a question, right? That he was manhandled, accosted, whatever you want to call it, escorted out, handcuffed, etc. Again, I keep seeing online people sans any evidence, right? They literally just, this is a frustrating bit. People literally just make the shit fucking up, right? And I've seen tweeters tweet out, well, he barged in, he pushed past security, and he got in there in the middle of it and started yammering questions. That's not what happened, according to him. He was there, he was listening. She said something about liberating the state from its socialist burdensome governorship or whatever, or leadership or whatever. And then he interrupted with a question. He said, at one point I had a question. So he was there, he was just listening, and then he heard something that made him want to speak up, and he spoke up, and then all this happened. Again, if he is to be believed, keep in mind, politicians lie. But also keep in mind, the government lies, right? So I don't know why you deep throat one by being ultra skeptical by the other. That's how you could tell someone who's a shill, by the way, is that they will automatically believe anything that their side says, but be ultra skeptical to the other side. And it's very easy to tell when this happens. but let's watch. Let's keep listening.
And let me emphasize, just as we've emphasized the right for people to peacefully protest and to stand up for their First Amendment rights, for our fundamental rights. I was there peacefully. At one point, I had a question. And so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I was not arrested. I was not detained.
That's important too. I see a lot of people saying he was resisting arrest. He was resisting arrest. Bro, he wasn't arrested. You can't resist arrest if you're not being arrested. Can we agree to that? One of the qualifiers for being guilty of resisting arrest is they have to be arresting you. He was not arrested. He says he wasn't detained, but like what do you mean by detained? I don't know. Handcuffed? Is that not detainment? I mean, if they only handcuffed him for like a minute and then he's like, no, really, I'm a senator, and then they unhandcuffed him, was he detained? I mean, for like a minute. But I don't know if we'd call that detainment in any real sense. But let's keep listening.
I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country. We will hold this administration accountable.
Okay, that's his side of the story. Let me find her side of the story. Okay, give me a second. I thought I had it up. I did not. Let's read some more. Jack, lost or scar for £5 say, I got here and saw Wick shouting and figure giving him currency will make him feel better. Oh, baby, we feel good. Especially when you give me your £5, baby. £5 from Jack. We love it. $10 from Artemis Fowl says she literally had police presence and protection. I don't know why you think she must react in order to validate that Padilla did try to rush on stage. I don't know why you would think she must do so. Do you have any evidence, any at all, that he rushed on stage? A clip, a video, anything? I'm willing to watch it. Maybe I didn't see it. This is breaking news. So, and you have my DMs. Just DM me the clip of him rushing on stage. $5 from Alexander Rin to say, the moment they put cuffs on him, it was considered an arrest. Detention requires reasonable suspicion. Well, I mean, like, Kristi Noem says he wasn't arrested. Again, I wish, did I exit out on accident? I had it up. Hold on. Cause I saw Kristi Noem on the news talking about it, right? And I saw a clip of it on X, and I thought I saved it. Fuck, did I miss it? If someone has that, please. I do want to get her side of things and listen to what she has to say. Shit, did I? Oh, are you giving me? What are you giving me here, buddy?
To remind you that 60% of sales on Amazon come from independent sellers. Tracy from
okay,
Lily's.
Whatever. I don't care about the ad. Okay. Yeah, we
are
just
staying
saw
here
this.
to liberate the city from the socialist and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into this city. So I want to say thank you to every single person that has.
Yeah, we just saw this, man. I watched this the first, I think this is the second clip we watched. This does not show him rushing onto stage. What are you talking about, brother? I'm asking if you have a clip of him rushing onto stage. Please send it to me. Because I would love to see it. And I will. Here, I'll give you this. If we can see him rushing onto stage, my opinion does a 180. Yeah, if you're rushing onto stage, you're going to get fucked, brother, right? Like, what are you doing? It does not. A reserved area when he's not supposed to be there. It's a public press conference. You're allowed to be there. Oh, to be clear, meme mind, he isn't rushing away from the stage. He's being pushed away from the stage. He's being shoved away from the stage, right? So, like, he wasn't doing that on his own. He's being manhandled out of the room. $10 from Alexander Rinn to say, legally speaking, when he was cuffed, he was under arrest. They needed to read him his rights at that point. They may not have intended to arrest him, but that's what it was. Is that, I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but I don't think anyone, colloquially, I don't think anyone considers that an arrest, but who knows? But yeah, if I'm more than willing to change my opinion and to change my mind on this. If you can show, because when this first was sent to me and I first saw it, my first question was, because the first thing I saw was this clip right here. The first thing I saw was this clip right here.
Sir.
That's what I saw, the first thing. My first question here was, what happened before this? What happened 30 seconds before this? What instigated this action? Okay. What instigated this action? And so I was sent by Zero Fucks, actually, the live stream, which we've watched a couple times now, where, again, you don't see it, but you hear it, right?
We are staying here to liberate this city from the socialist and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country and what they have tried to insert into this city. So I want to say thank
you. You hear him in the background asking his question or starting to ask his question right here, okay? Now, again, if he's barging in, you would have heard shit way before this, gang. You would have heard shit way before this. If someone's rushing the stage, they're shouting at him to stop way before he starts speaking. Right? Way before that. They're at the door, right? They're right there. There's security right there in the room. There's security at the doors. They let him through. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't barging in. They weren't trying to stop him. The only time that they tried to stop him was when he started asking a question. And again, maybe I'm misinterpreting this. Maybe there's video that shows I am wrong and incorrect. Fair enough. Provide it. Because the preponderance of evidence that I'm seeing shows that he was just there. He asked a question, and he started to ask a question. Then they started pushing him, shoving him out of the door. And I feel that's very excessive force. Very excessive force for something that plainly wasn't threatening at all. But yes, thank you, Zero Fucks, for linking me the live stream so I could see that. Because again, there are absolutely context in which what the officers did there was perfectly fine, right? If he was doing what many on the internet, sans any evidence, claimed he was doing, and just barging past security, running up on stage, shouting, yelling, screaming, throwing a fit, then yeah, do what you gotta do, right? But that's not what happened. At least not from any video I've seen. $2 from Zephyr Hash. It says, party of free speech sure hates free speech. True. The Scorned One says, I worked with the FBI when we did briefings like this or of a similar nature. We always knew when someone important walked in, even if they didn't directly notify us, or people would identify him. And again, he's not a no-name. He's not a state senator. He's a U.S. senator, right? So I can understand. I can get it if he was just some guy from the state of California who was on the state senate, not in the federal capacity whatsoever. They might not know who he is. They may not recognize him. I can understand that. I can wrap my brain around that, right? But surely, Secret Service would know who a U.S. senator was on site. I would hope that's the case. And if that's not the case, then what are we doing here? What are we doing here, gang? Jeez Louise. And this is a problem, right? Is had all Kristi Noem had to do to turn the situation on its head, to diffuse the situation, to de-escalate the situation, to any of that, was simply acknowledge him. Oh, I see my colleague, Senator Padilla's here. He has a question. Well, allow me to finish speaking, and I'll allow you to have your question. It is a press conference, after all. Do we have a seat in front for the senator? Then none of this would be an issue. He wouldn't get to do his little stunt. And I acknowledge this was a stunt. This was a stunt. Greg Yo says, has Wick recovered from his absolute beatdown last night? Okay. My absolute beatdown last night. If you think that was in any way a loss for me, I'm sorry, but I can't take you seriously. I just can't. The unfortunate thing about last night is it kind of discredited Gibbs' whole operation. If they viewed that as a loss for me, then you can just kind of laugh at anything they have to say from going forward. And that's unfortunate for Gibbs, because I like Gibbs. It was not intentional that I discredited his whole operation like that, but hey. $5 from Lesson Celta says, was he asking a question or interrupting the briefing? Can you replay? Because I'm not sure at the moment. Yeah, we can replay again.
Burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country, and what they have tried to insert into this city. So I want to say thank you.
Do you hear it? Are you guys able to hear that when he starts to... It is an interruption, but it's interrupting with a question. Oops. There we go. Oh, you DM'd me a clip? Let me look at the clip, Zero Fucks. Okay, let me get it. Okay, let's watch this together, gang. This is not previewed, so I have no idea what this clip is going to show. So we're going to find out together, gang.
I want to know why you insist
So I want to say thank you to every single...
Yeah, he wasn't moving toward... Hold on, let's play that one more time.
So I want to say thank you to every...
He was not moving towards the stage. He was not rushing it. He's being grabbed, and he's trying to not be pushed back, but he's being pushed back. Let's watch it one again, just to make sure.
Tried to insert into
I want to know why you
the city.
insist
So I want to say thank you to every single person.
Yeah, I don't see any rushing. He's sitting there. He's got his feet planted, and he's gesticulating with his arms and his hands to ask his question. Thank you for the clip. Play it slower. Okay. Let me see. Playback speed. What do we want? 0.5? Let's play at half speed. Let's see.
Try to insert it. So I want to say thank you to every single person.
Yeah, I don't see him rushing. He's got his feet planted. He's not in forward motion. Also, the audio is shit at 0.5 speed. Can we just say that? The audio is shit at 0.5 speed. $5. Play it slower. Looks like his leg was moving towards Noem. I did play it slower. We just did. It didn't look like it. He's got his feet planted. Definitely wasn't rushing. $5 from Lesson Cell. Say, aren't questions supposed to be after, not during? Not justifying Noem's team, but it doesn't sound like a question to me. Can you hear what he is asking? It's really hard to hear exactly what he's asking. It is interrupting. I'll just grant you that. It is interrupting. He is interrupting. Is that rude? Kinda. But I don't think it warrants the response he got. I think the force used against him was excessive. Zephyr Hash for $2. Notice how we have moved from lunging to moving? No, look, in Artemis Foul's defense, he just wanted to play it black to be sure, and he now says that he's just standing there. So he agrees with us now, or at least that he's not rushing. He got a 5-yard penalty. Yeah, like Scorned One says, I mean, to be fair, when you literally say you're going to liberate the city from their democratically elected leader. So, yeah, he did, Kirsty Noem did say something pretty inflammatory, and I can understand why he chose that moment to interrupt, but it's still rude. It's still, I'll just give you that. It's still rude. What Kirsty Noem should have done is, hey, I'm still talking. You can ask your question after I'm done. That's it. Easy peasy. Maybe politicians and maybe people who are in positions like that where they give press conferences, maybe they should host panels beforehand so they understand how to deal with interrupters, okay? This is, maybe I'm just assuming everyone knows how to do this because I do this all the time for my job. Maybe I'm being unfair. I assume everyone knows how to deal with an unruly guest because I do it all the time. I've done it for years. So I just assume everyone knows kind of like how to judge context, when to shut someone up, when not to, how to deal with an unruly guest. I don't know, but you know. And again, remember how Homeland Security's official Twitter account said this was. Says Senator Padilla chose disrespectful political theater and interrupted a live press conference without identifying himself or having the Senate security pin on as he lunged towards Secretary Noem. Okay, look. And this is what they're quote tweeting. This is a clip they're quote tweeting.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla.
The first thing he does here in this clip, it's not the first thing he says, and we can see that from the other clips, right? But the first thing he says in the clip that they're quote tweeting that they're saying he didn't identify himself is him identifying himself. That's the first thing he's doing.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I didn't know his first name until now, but yeah. Yes, I did show the video of him being put to the ground and handcuffed. We watched that. True. Local Glowy says, even CNN is clouding on the game. Maybe when Wick gets a memo, he'll change his tune. Again, unless you show me video of him rushing the stage like is being claimed by some, then my view changes. But the fact that he was simply interrupting, and I would grant you that's a little rude, and trying to ask a question while he had his firmly planted on the ground. He was not lunging. He was not reaching for a weapon. His hands were gesticulating. It was clear he was not a threat. And then he was being treated with that amount of excessive force. It's crazy. And again, this all assumes that no one knew who he was. He's a sitting U.S. senator. He should have been clocked the moment he came in the room. $5 from Artemis Fowl to say, I am sure there are differences between elected or government officials giving briefings versus YouTube streamers. True. $20 from Alexander Rin to say, my apologies for earlier. I was wrong about when it's arrest. Ignore what I said. I was curious about that. I didn't know, but I was like, well, Alexander Rin's a pretty good guy. He wouldn't lie to me, would he? Well, thank you for the $20 apology. I appreciate that. So everything that we were reading about Alexander Rin saying it was an arrest, we can ignore. Thank you for the $20. And $5 from Lesson Cell. Say, I grant you and agree the response is inadequate. Not inadequate, it was excessive. Inadequate would have been if they didn't do enough. Inappropriate is another word. Maybe you were looking for that. Since we were watching this on the video, can we be sure that he did or didn't lunge, or that maybe seems so? Again, if you can show me video of him lunging, but the clip I think that gives us the best angle is the one Zero Fucks DM'd to me. And again, you can see him when he starts talking.
Thank you.
He's not going forward. He's just gesticulating. He's nowhere near her, and he's being pushed at this point, right? As soon as he starts talking. Yeah. So, as sure as I can be, unless, again, there's something before this or that we didn't see, but again, had he been rushing in, you would have heard the commotion well before the point he starts talking. You would have heard people reacting. You would have heard the scene, if you will, well before this incident. This moment in time, I should say. So can I be 100% sure? No, but I can be 99% sure at this point. Greg Yo says that there was a video of him lunging or attacking that would have been the first video released. Yes, we would have. I would assume we would have seen that. Did I watch his response? Yes. What I did lose, and if someone wants to DM it to me because I really want to watch it, is Kirsty Noem talked about it on one of the news stations. I'm not sure which. After, and I want to hear her words. I saw it, and I thought I bookmarked it. But I did not bookmark it. I failed you. And I lost it. I X'd it out, thinking I had saved it. And I did not. And that is a sad day. Oh, yeah. Had he been a dog, he'd be dead right now. She would have shot him. $5 from Zephyr Hash to say, Wick, what's worse? Them knowing he's a senator and doing that, or them not knowing and would have done that to anyone who wanted to ask a question? Man, both are bad. Right? Both are bad. Again, if anyone, look, Grim, if you show me a video of him rushing the stage or barging in or lunging at her or anything threatening like that, I will instantly change my opinion. Again, when I first saw it, I looked for that. I looked because, man, why would they do this? This seems excessive. Surely he did something to prompt that behavior. That's just my mind, right? I'm like, surely he did something that made them react this way. And I tried to find it. I could not find it. Everything I did find showed the opposite of that. But again, I am not a wizard, okay, despite my appearance, and there might exist information that I am unaware of. As soon as you give me that information, I will process that information, and I will change my opinion if that information contradicts my statements or my thoughts or the way I see it as of now. $5 says, Lesson Cell says, thank you for the word correction. Yeah, on the video we have, it does look like he wasn't moving at all. Hopefully there is a better video to come out. Maybe. But again, the only reason people turned their cameras to him was because he did something that was that interrupted, right? That caught their attention. Just thinking logically, right? Had there been a commotion before that where he's barging in or rushing in, they would have turned the cameras at that moment. And we would have seen that on a whole lot of cameras by now. But maybe they were all just slow. It's possible. Who knows? Hold on, Grim. We can make inferences from incomplete data. Like, you act as if we have to wait for 100% information to make an inference and to make a statement. I can say with 90% surety that this is what happened because this is what all the data that I have so far points to. If new data comes into play that changes my opinion, I will change my opinion. But we don't have to wait for 100% complete information to make a statement on these things. We don't. $10 from Artemis Valve says, I want to point out that normal people interrupting official proceedings get dragged out of rooms all the time. Like, how many videos of Palestine supporters getting thrown out of Congress? I've not seen any of them get thrown to the ground and handcuffed. But I've not watched a whole lot of those. There might be out there. And like I said, had he actually rushed the stage, okay. Like, a lot of them rush the stage with their little flags and stuff. Had he done something like that, okay. But I haven't seen that. ZeroFax says, I wish SFO Dev knew that you don't need 100% data to form an educated opinion on things. Look, a lot of people, look, I get the hesitancy for some. And look, there's so much misinformation out these days when an event like this happens that it is wise to wait a beat. Okay, it is wise to wait a beat. But I did. And ZeroFox, you can confirm this. I said, hey, here's this piece of data I have. I'm not sure that this is correct. I want more. You gave me more, and you gave me enough so that I could make I feel, an educated opinion on it. Oh, what? If this is a Rickroll, Toby-Wan Kenobi, I'm going to ban you, okay? You know that, right? I'm not kidding. If this is a Rickroll, do you want me to click on this or no? Okay. You know you're going to get banned if this is a Rickroll. Okay? Now, this is just an ad, gang. Don't worry. Ad.
Character.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. We have. Thank you. Good. Not a Rickroll. We got it. Let's listen to what she has to say. It's a little long. We'll go through some of it.
It's good to have you with us today. We all saw what happened in the video of that room when he was physically taken out, and you heard just now his response, and I understand you had a personal conversation with him as well. So what do you want to say about all of this?
You know, what I would say is we were conducting a press conference to update everyone on the enforcement actions that are ongoing to bring peace to the city of Los Angeles. And this man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me, and
She's repeating the lunging statement. But remember, nothing we have seen so far seems to confirm that. In fact, what we have seen does not confirm it, but instead contradicts it. But let's keep listening.
Elevating his voice and was stopped, did not identify himself, and was removed from the rooms.
Once again, one of the first things he says, it's not the exact first thing, but one of the first things he says is, I am Senator Alex Padilla.
So as soon as he identified himself, appropriate actions were taken. But I would say that, I had a conversation with the senator after this. We sat down for 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was, that until he was already had been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time. And that this, we're leaders, we're public servants. And if he had requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong, and it does a disservice to this country and the people who live here. So we sat down, had a conversation. We probably disagree on 90% of the topics, but we agreed to exchange phone numbers. We'll continue to talk and share information. And
what if they started dating after this, gang? I don't know if either of them were married, but they exchanged phone numbers. What if they wanted to get dinner, right? And they started dating. What if that happened? What if we're in that? What if we're, what if this was, hold on. What if he's just trying to get her number? What if he just wanted her digits, gang? The play, bros. Look, he's in it now. He's in her DMs, okay? He's got those digits. He's calling her up like, yo, I know we had a little bit of a tiff earlier, right? And I know a big, strong man like me might have been a little scary to you. But, you want to handcuff me again? Maybe in private without the cameras? Bros. Okay. that would be probably the most amusing, the most amusing thing, but probably the most unrealistic thing. Let's keep watching.
And I think that's the way it should be in this country. I wish he would have acted that way in the beginning instead of creating a scene like this.
Well, you're saying that nobody knew who he was, and if they did, he would have been treated differently. And you just heard his comment. He said, if this is the way they treat a U.S. senator, you can only imagine how others are being treated in these deportation efforts. What would you say to that, Secretary?
Yeah. I think his statement is absolutely ridiculous. This man burst into a room, started advancing towards the podium, interrupting an opening statement, elevating his voice, shouting questions. People tried to stop him from interrupting the press conference. He refused and continued to lunge towards the podium, and that is when he was removed from the room. So the way that he acted was completely inappropriate. It wasn't becoming a U.S. senator or a public official, and perhaps he wanted the scene, and that's what
He absolutely wanted the scene. Let's just be real. He absolutely wanted this scene. He wanted this to happen. Does anyone disagree with that? He absolutely wanted the scene. Of course he did. It's good press. But yeah, him lunging. Crazy. Crazy, gang. In about 10 minutes, we have our actual panel. Okay. This is the information we got so far. We've heard both sides of the story. I am curious what everyone here thinks. I'll give you my opinion. This was excessive. It was excessive force. It did not need to happen like this. It should not have happened like this. For asking a question during a press conference, you should not have had that level of force put upon you and been handcuffed and thrown to the ground. It's too much. And this is, it's just, it's what we're going to be talking about now. In the discourse, right? In the overall timeline, this is going to have some weight. This clip is going to be played over and over and over again. And I think it doesn't play well for the administration. I think it plays poorly for them. Because look at the context of what they're being accused of, what people are saying about them. $5 from Dwight Baldwin to say, remember back in 2009, a couple was able to get by Secret Service and crash a White House dinner with Obama? I don't remember that. I don't remember that. So were they arrested? Like, what happened there? Tell me the story. I don't remember it. I'm going to be honest. That was from years ago, okay? My memory's shot. Oh, you missed a part of Kirsty Noem's presser where she said $50 to liberate Wig TV from his hoodie. Yeah, I don't remember that. Bro, you gotta tell me more of the story, though. Were they thrown to the ground, arrested? Were they handcuffed? When's the panel? About 9 minutes. Okay. Not your average guy says, at what point was her security team supposed to use force? If, and please, if you have video of this, show me. If he had been rushing the stage, if he'd been lunging at the stage, if he'd been drawing a weapon, if he'd been trying to throw something at her, anything like that, then yes, even a U.S. Senator can catch these hands, okay? No one is above the law. But it's not against the law to interrupt. It's just not. It's not against the law to ask a question at a public press conference. Or hell, even a private one. They were pushing him. He was trying not to be pushed to the ground. They had to restrain him multiple times. They kept pushing him. He was asking a question, and they just started shoving the shit out of him. We can watch the clip again if you want. Hold on, no. I am correct. Let's watch the fucking clip. We have this on fucking video. You will not gaslight me. He's getting pushed. He's getting pushed. He's getting pushed. He's getting pushed. He's trying not to get pushed, but he's getting pushed. He's not pushing back. He's trying to, he's trying not to fall, but they're pushing him. They're literally shoving the shit out of him. He's out of the room. We can't see this part. Maybe he pushes in. I don't know. He's got his hands up now. He's out of the room. They're throwing him on the ground. Forcing him to the ground.
He's getting my hands. Go ahead. Put him behind my back.
All right. Cool. Hand. Lay flat.
And handcuffing him. So don't you dare gaslight me. Don't you dare gaslight me. We just fucking saw it. Oh shit. Unfortunately, links in my YouTube chat have had to be turned off because we've had an incident before. So they only work in the Twitch chat, but you can DM them to me. Oh, Inachu, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Really appreciate that, brother. Or sister, I'm not sure. More angry Wick? What am I supposed to be angry about? I'm not angry yet. I wasn't even angry there. Not really. People think because I get loud, I'm angry, and that's not always the case. Sometimes it is, right? You guys just, you like to call everything I do angry, right? Being thrown to the ground and handcuffed was excessive force in this situation, not your average guy. It absolutely was. He presented no threat. He was unarmed, not lunging at anyone, not barging into the room. He was presenting no threat. They did not need to handcuff him. He was out of the room, away from the Kirsty Noem, well in hand. There was no need to handcuff that man or put him on the ground. We just saw the video of him being thrown down. Bipedal meatback. We literally just saw it. They forced him to the ground. We call it the wick roll? Maybe. Oh, people are wanting in. What up, soy boy?
There we go.
Sorry, I
Hey,
didn't see your
think you
DM.
forgot about me.
I didn't forget about you. We're live, by the way.
Uh-oh. Hold on. Let me put away my list of slurs.
Audacity. Yes, they forced him. Do you want to see the clip again? We're talking about the Padilla clip. Did you see the Padilla clip?
Oh, where they like manhandled him out of the I saw the clip. I don't know the context. Haven't had time to look at it.
Had you been watching the stream for the last hour, we went over it. Quite
Reading about trans people, Wick. It's more important than the erosion of our democracy. Okay.
Fair enough. Let's get Tali in here as well. Tali, what's up? You're live. Oh, maybe she can hear us. I don't know.
Hello.
Ah, there we are. We can hear her.
Wick, I don't know if you're using the wrong mic right now, but you sound very crackly right now. It sounds like you're using the webcam mic.
Me?
No, the other Wick.
Oh, okay. Does that sound like that to everyone? Does it sound like that to you?
That's all. He sounds less clear than normal.
It's not terrible, but yeah, it is like almost.
Is this better?
Like I'm hearing it through something else. Oh, speak.
Is this better?
Yeah, there you go.
Good now? Okay. On Discord I was, on my stream I wasn't. So,
God bless.
Yeah. So yeah, streamers, the stream team here wouldn't have seen a difference, but I apparently on Discord my settings changed. So the his thetans levels are too high. Oh, Audacity, even though you're dumb and wrong here, you did make me a cool intro screen. The problem with the intro screen is the music is copyright. And so I can't play everyone the cool intro screen because it's copyrighted music. And I don't have the rights to it. That's sad. Sad, sad boy. Oh. Tali, did you see the Senator Padilla stuff?
It's pronounced Padilla.
Yeah.
Is it?
No.
Oh.
But I got you.
I'm a little embarrassed because I didn't know what he looked like either.
Well, you aren't the Homeland Security Secretary, so fair.
That's true. That's true.
I'll give you grace.
There's a lot of faces. There's a lot of faces to be familiar with, even if that is your job. I'm not even trying to give her any credit there, but there are plenty of forgetful faces in the government.
Maybe.
But it seems pretty ridiculous.
It is pretty ridiculous. Oh, speaking of ridiculous, how you doing, Erudite? Oh, she'll be here in a second. Give her a second. We could see her. You're muted on your end. On Discord. Yeah. Tali, can you invite your buddy to the stream or to the Discord and tell him
Trying to give him direction. Oh, is he not in the Discord?
Maybe he joined and I didn't see him. But I don't see him join. Send him the link to the Discord and have him join. I'll give him the role and then have him jump backstage. Is Tali in chat yet? And what is her name? Yeah, Tali is Tali Bots. Okay, that's who she is.
Sorry, I'm a little stupid. Can you send me the link and I can send it to him?
Oh, if I must.
Sorry. It's not obvious to me.
I sent you the DM.
Thank you.
Typical Wick TV stream. There's always
It's always one.
Okay. He has to accept the rules. I'm assuming... Oh, that wasn't him. I almost gave someone a role I shouldn't have. Okay, I gave him the role. He jumps backstage, and I'll pull him in.
He's in?
He's in the Discord. He needs to go jump backstage, and then I'll pull him in. And then we've gotten
Tali,
all the
what's your,
Padilla stuff
your
out of
Jewish
our
stuff on the
system.
shelf? I feel even less Jewish without a necklace and whatever that shrine does.
Well, this is a prayer book from my wedding and my grandmother's wedding.
Oh.
These are a couple Jewish art and civilization books. Yahrzeit candle. Yeah.
Cool.
All we have
Now
is
pull
a
out,
menorah.
pull out
for
all
me
your
and
Jew
my-
stuff.
Well,
Pull
we just
out
have a
all your
menorah because
Jew
me and
stuff.
my roommate are both Jewish, so we, it's easily taken down when the second crystal knock happens. Like we don't want to have too many things to put in the closet.
Okay.
That's fair. Whoa, I actually have so much Jew stuff. I have a dreidel too. I've got like everything right on hand.
Does that give you more powers during the stream, right? Like when you're in debating,
Yes.
do you ever channel it? Like, I'm going to channel my Jewish ancestry. The power of the dreidel to get more debate
Yes.
skills. Is that what happens?
Well, the Jews are unironically overrepresented in trans-identifying people, in trans research, in sexuality research. So yes, that does give me extra credit in this conversation.
Okay. I don't
just
know if
fact.
that's true, but
It's just a fact. It is. It is.
Erudite was here. Let's see.
I like that Aaron just has a book called Trans right there. You see that right in the middle, square dead center.
It's a good book.
I'll take your word for it. I don't read a
Politically
lot
charged,
anymore.
but it's a good book. Oh, Aaron, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted on your end, sir.
There we go. Am I here?
Yeah, your sensitivity is too low, so you're like not being picked up for your first words. So either put on push to talk or lower the sensitivity so it just goes through. Or up the sensitivity. I don't know the fucking, you know what I mean.
Okay, I just changed the sensitivity probably in the wrong direction.
I think you're okay. Keep talking.
Okay, cool.
Still a little quiet though. I don't know if you want to get closer or turn the volume up.
Let's see here.
Erudite will be with us in 1 second. She apologizes. Aaron, I don't think I know you. I'm Wick. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the show.
To meet you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. You come highly recommended by Tali here, and we like Tali over here. So yeah.
Aaron, you might want to check. It might be Discord might have picked the wrong mic. It sounds like maybe it's the same thing that Wick was doing. It's using a webcam mic. Like tap on it real quick, see if it does like the light up.
What I'm gonna do here is just go into because I'm gonna use my AirPods for audio. It defaults to the AirPods being the speaker, and I don't want that or the mic. Output should be. Oh, it's like
that sounds better.
The audio just improved 1,000 times, but your video dipped.
Okay, and you guys are now coming out of my speaker and not my computer instead of my AirPods. What the hell?
It's okay. Everyone, like both sides, have a tech issue person today. We have Erudite with a tech issue and Aaron with a tech issue. So
this is why old people shouldn't live stream.
Wick, she wasn't talking to you. Why are you offended?
Yeah, I know, right?
Do you think you're old, Wick?
I am old compared to
How
all
old
of
are
you.
you? Aren't you like 30?
How old are you?
I'm 41.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll be
okay.
joining you here. No, I already did. Yeah, I'm also 41 as well as of the
You
last
just
few
yeah.
days.
Neither of you look 41.
Yep.
It's true.
Okay.
Clean living, baby. Okay.
Soypill, how old are you?
Speak for yourself.
How old do I look? You have to insult or compliment me right now by guessing.
27.
Oh, I'm 29. Oh dear.
Okay, there we go. Cool.
How's my
And
audio now?
It's good.
Much better.
And yeah, in Twitch
Okay,
years,
cool.
I'm like ancient. In Twitch years, I'm like 83. But yeah.
What's Twitch years? Like 7 to 1?
No, it's like 2 to 1. Anything over 30, you instead of gaining a year, you gain 3 years, right? So something like that.
Sounds right.
Where's my
okay.
debate partner?
I don't know where Erudite is. She said she had a blue screen and is rebooting. But well, I guess we're gonna start. And when
What?
she gets here, well, no,
Let me
we'll
come
give her
back.
another minute.
This is the one
it's just,
time where
it's
I'm
al-
like,
we're
don't
already
make
at
me
like
give you one.
8 minutes.
She knows way more than me. I want her in here.
I understand.
I think she's going to be amenable. I think she actually already half agrees with us, actually. So
I guess we'll find
Uh-oh.
out. Okay, you're deafened on your end, but we can see you. Oh my gosh, you can't hear us.
If she's deaf and she can't hear you.
I'm DMing her.
I got to get me one of those.
Camera cloth?
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully she's Oh, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, I'm fighting with this camera. Something's wrong with it. It's like blown out and grainy. It's really weird, and it's a 4K camera, so
Looks
there's
fine
no
on this
reason-
end.
Yeah, it looks
It
fine.
looks terrible on my side. Maybe it's my
Me.
up.
My camera's actually terrible, so it's fine.
That's not true. Your camera's not
Okay.
terrible.
Okay. Well, are we ready to begin? We're about a little late. Let's just get
Yeah.
this show on the road, gang, and hopefully you can mess with the tech as we go. Okay. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And today, we're going to be talking about trans-affirmative healthcare. Is trans-affirmative healthcare life-saving? Is it medically necessary? What does trans-affirmative healthcare even mean? How has it been handled? We're going to go through it. We're going to talk about it. And we got a great debate today with some great people. I like every single person on here. I don't know you, Aaron, but Tali likes you, so I like you too. And we'll just get into it. I'm going to give first the mic to Soy Pill, and then we're just going to go around the room. Soy Pill, start us off. Give us what you got.
Yeah, basically my position is trans people exist. I live in San Francisco. I keep tripping over them every time I go on a walk. And the data that I've looked through, studies and otherwise, surveys, quality of life stuff, seems to show that gender affirming care is a positive treatment that has a good effect on suicidality, gender dysphoria, and just overall mental well-being. It's interesting because I think a lot of people don't talk about this spectrum of gender affirming care in this conversation. Everyone just kind of thinks, oh, you get a bottom surgery or not, where it seems to be a spectrum of anywhere from surgery all the way back to, hey, I just want to change my name and present a little differently. And both of these things fall under that umbrella. And both of these things seem to have positive outcomes. So I've looked at the people that kind of oppose this, and upon scrutiny, it seems like the data is misrepresented or neutral at best. So just given the evidence that I've been able to analyze, and also, although I don't want to use this as very strong evidence, my anecdotal experience living in the trans mecca of America, it seems like gender affirming care works and it helps the people that are asking for it. So I support it as a life-saving measure that reduces suicidality, and people should have access to it.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. Aaron, tell people who you are, what you do, and what are your thoughts. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. So my name is Aaron. I co-host a podcast with Tali here called The Navel Gaze. I am myself a transgender man. I transitioned in 2011 or 12. I can never remember which one. But anyway, a little over a decade ago. And all in all, fits exactly what Soy here was saying. Improved my quality of life. I was very happy with having, the ability to transition and, did what it said on the tin. And I just proceeded with my life quite happily for the next 5 or 6 years until around 2017 when I encountered a number of fellow FTMs, females who were either trans-identified or male-identified, living as men or trans men, etc. Many of whom expressed that their transition was motivated by a desire to be trans, not to be male. They didn't actually experience gender dysphoria. They just felt that basically there was some sort of social good. These aren't the words that they were using, but it was clear that from what they were trying to express, that they had essentially joined a social movement, and transition was what you do to validate your involvement in this social movement. And they were quite kind of alarmed by me stating that I actually wanted to be a man, and I thought that I should be a man. Was like, the typical experience of gender dysphoria. They were kind of like freaked out by it, and it was like, oh, that's just kind of what you tell cis people in order to gain access to this, to trans healthcare. Anyway, so learning, these are people that I encountered in my real day-to-day life, and so I went back online into the kind of trans sphere and realized that the things that they were saying had become quite commonplace. A lot of young people. These are people between the ages of 21 and 25 that I was encountering, who were transitioning to be trans, and that was again quite alarming. So I just started to re-immerse myself in the forums. Started just kind of like trying to figure out what it was that had gone wrong, like what is happening here. That's when I encountered Lisa Littman's work on rapid onset gender dysphoria, and it was describing exactly what I was seeing in these young women and or young trans men. And so I was quite relieved. I was like, okay, sweet. The professionals are aware of this and are looking into it. Anyway, so then I got immersed into the more gender critical sphere, and anyway, just started talking about the experience of being trans in the light of nothing, or it isn't all what it seems behind the scenes, essentially.
Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to get into it as we go. Thank you for being here, right? I didn't mean to cut you off there, but we're already late, right? So
Sorry.
we got to get through. These are just opening thoughts. Erudite, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts? Trans-affirming healthcare, yay or nay?
Hello. Yes, thanks for having me. I think the trans-affirming healthcare is a complicated question, and I think I'm excited for the conversation because I saw Tali speak before. I think she's extremely capable, so I'm excited. But it seems like the opposition is also really, really informed. So I suspect that this is probably going to be a lot less blood sportsy. One of the things that I keep hearing is these elements of the nuance within the community that is probably being underserved both at research and in communication, right? I think what Aaron, am I using your name correctly, Aaron? I think what Aaron brought up about the rapid onset individuals versus there's also a cohort that typically seems to notice their dysphoria at puberty, but not before, versus individuals who at about 2 to 3, like basically as soon as they can verbalize dysphoria, are verbalizing the dysphoria. And there's kind of these 3 categories of individuals that we see, maybe potentially more, and they kind of all get broad brushed as the same treatment modality. But also, as Soypill pointed out, gender-affirming care is spectrumal as well, which is good because if it's a spectrumal disorder, it should probably be spectrumal in its care. And so I am pro gender-affirming care. I think that trans identity is neuropsychological, but also neurobiological. However, There are ways in which neurobiology is plastic, and it's important to kind of understand all of these elements. I do think that gender affirming care seems to overall lead to a better outcome for the trans individuals that undergo the procedures and the treatments. It leads to higher quality, less dysphoria, higher quality life, less dysphoria, less time off work, et cetera, et cetera. All the markers that we look for functioning and flourishing. So I am pro GAC, gender affirming care.
Hey, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you coming. Last but certainly not least, the person responsible for this panel, because she asked me to set it up, Tali, what you got?
Okay, I will try to be concise, but as I told our opponents last night in our group chat, this is a topic that I care a lot about, and I'm really excited to be speaking with the two of them because I think they're thoughtful and smart, and I'm hoping that I'll actually be able to change their minds in some way. I think we're starting with the same outcome in mind, which is for people with dysphoria and trans people to have happy, well-adjusted, successful lives and to have access to medical care that is helpful for them and that they can understand. The reason that I'm against gender affirming care, number one, is because ultimately they don't actually know what they're treating. And so I'm not against hormone access. I'm not against surgical interventions for trans people. I am against the system that functions on very low to moderate evidence at all and kind of tells people or sets people up with expectations that are not always realistic and that are not always informed about what the actual long-term outcomes are. I know we're not focusing exclusively on children here, but gender affirming care in the standards of care from WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, does include youth gender affirming care, and there are even more concerns that I have about that and our ability to actually determine who is going to benefit from this care long term. So not only do we have the issue of people who detransition, who might have regret for the interventions that they had, we also have people who go on to continue to identify as trans for the rest of their lives, who have regret about some of the interventions that they had. Gender affirming care in some cases can actually limit the potential for different surgical outcomes in the future, which was something that it was attempting to control for, especially when we're talking about early intervention and youth intervention. And so ultimately what I want is for trans people to have the most informed care possible, and I don't think that the infrastructure that we have today is doing that. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think most clinicians and doctors who work with this population believe they are doing what's best. But I think there's been unfortunately a real capture of the academic research amongst activists, and that is to the detriment of those individuals and the trans community at large.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and we will get into it as we go. Well, that's the floor. That's the setup. I guess first question, right, that we have to ask, gender affirming care. A lot of people have said and claimed that it's being pushed, and Tali just mentioned it's being pushed by activists, right? That a lot of people are being pushed to be trans who would otherwise not be trans, and they go through procedures, take hormones, and do other things that they come later to regret. Do we agree with this? Do we disagree with this? I want to hear from Soypill and Erudite first.
So is the question that there are people who may otherwise have not self-identified with some sort of gender dysphoria, but because of the community at large kind of making this a positive movement, people would otherwise fall into that camp, kind of what Aaron was describing? Is that the question?
Yes.
I don't think there's a huge amount of that. I think if you look at the CAS report, they kind of indicate that the exponential growth of people identifying as trans is kind of more than what would be expected, although there are refutations of this, and I'm not quite sure to what extent that is happening, although I can for sure, like, anecdotally say that, like I said, living in an incredibly progressive area, I do know people who have verbatim told me I was bored of being cis and not having anything to do with transition as a gender dysphoric thing, but rather, I wanted to be trans or I wanted to be different. I'm sure this does happen. To what extent that's harmful, though, is a completely different question, because these people, again, are not incredibly, in pain or unhappy. They seem to be happy from my knowledge. And I guess the question is, and maybe this is something Tali agrees with, if these people are seeking some sort of gender affirming care based on both the WPATH and the Endocrine Society and even the CAS report, they kind of recommend a holistic, multi-stepped, multifaceted approach from doctors and psychologists to make sure that you do indeed want something that is a very serious, potentially irreversible thing like a surgery. If that's indeed the case, then if some of these people are socially contagioned, so long as they meet the criteria, I think it's fine. And they think that the people that wouldn't be suffering from gender dysphoria wouldn't meet those criteria and therefore wouldn't be harmed because they're not getting some sort of irreversible change to their bodies.
I jump in?
Yeah,
before
it's open
Erudite goes?
discussion. Go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So I partially agree with you, and I even want to take some of the loading off of terms like social contagion and like like the groups like Gays Against Groomers, for example. As a gay person, I don't associate with any of that messaging. I don't think that trans people are out there trying to recruit cis people to turn into trans people. I don't think any of that is happening. I think rapid onset gender dysphoria and the social contagion that people like Abigail Schreier have written about is much less nefarious. It's much more kind of like, especially when we're talking about the young females, it's women having very emoting very relationally, feeling and taking on very strongly what their friends are taking on. It's also potentially an example of like the symptom pool where people are actually experiencing distress. So these kids are actually extremely anxious, extremely depressed, might have issues with their own body. And when they look up like what does this mean, trans is the answer that's given to them. So I don't think that this is like some conspiratorial push to make the frogs gay or make the kids trans at all.
Yeah, I wasn't accusing you of that, but I'm saying that it is like a movement that some people feel not pressured into or like even groomed into is such a silly word, but people that like might adhere to something that turns out not to be gender dysphoria, which is why sometimes you see when you poll people who detransition, some of them say it's because of not enough acceptance. I think that's the majority. Over 50% say it's because my community didn't accept me. But some of them say like, hey, I thought I was, and then it turned out it wasn't that. And that's totally fine, especially when it is like, hey, I got on puberty blockers and I went off, or I took testosterone for 6 months and realized, you know what, I don't think I have gender dysphoria. That seems fine.
So the reason, sorry.
Go ahead,
Just
Erudite.
Okay, yeah.
Erudite first, then we'll go to Tali, please.
I was just going to kind of like bridge. I think social contagion, particularly from social media, is something that's kind of going to be understudied for a while. This reminds me, this is very akin to the Tourette's conversation that emerged during COVID, where a lot of like 13 to 15-year-old girls were showing Tourette's symptomology. But it was around the same time that Tourette's TikTok was really popular. People just really enjoyed like watching cute Tourette's teens making cookies and spilling things all over the place and just doing little silly little antics, right? And there was this interesting phenomena where we did see an increase in Tourette's presentation. The issue is that most of it just resolved pretty quickly when you like removed access, or if you just like kind of like countered them on it and being like, do you have Tourette's really? Like the moment that like some of the self-analysis was applied, you saw a massive diminishment of those symptomologies. The interesting thing though is that that wasn't the case for all of them. And so there's this interesting question of, okay, well, to what degree is the people that were lumped into the study as the contagion group, to what degree were they always going to develop Tourette's? To what degree is Tourette's epigenetic enough that social media can be an environmental trigger that triggers these type of genetics? And I think that there can be this akin question to transgenderism, because I do think fundamentally transgenderism is a neurobiological phenomena. I think there is evidence for it occurring within the brain and at the brain level. But if that's the case, in the same way with like even something like schizophrenia, if it is the case that it is neurobiological, there are neural correlates for it. This does mean that environmental stimuli can potentially trigger it in the way that certain weed consumption, if you have a genetic marker for it, can trigger schizophrenia and it will be permanent. And I think that that's a really interesting conversation to have. The issue is that it's a very, very, very teeny tiny amount of the population compared to, I think, what typically we talk about when we're talking about contagion behavior.
Tali, you had something to say, and then I have another question to maybe move this a little more contentious.
So
right?
I think I want to pick up on the neural correlates thing, but I'm going to put that to the side for now and just get back to something that Soypill was saying. So when we're looking at things like the CAS report and then also looking at gender affirming care in the United States, frankly, unfortunately, we don't really have the same systems. And the UK, where the cast report was, where they needed to initiate the cast report and take a look at what they were doing, because the outcomes that they were having were not what they had expected. They found that it was severely lacking there, where it's much stricter than it actually is in the United States. So because we don't have we don't have the NHS, we don't have one central healthcare authority, we don't actually have ways of tracking these things or making sure we're not holding any clinicians to account for whether or not they are holding to the standards of care from WPATH. WPATH has its own issues. So the problem is, and it sounds like I'm not giving any opportunity for a win here, but not only is there no consistency in the United States among providers of how they are implementing standards of care, the standards of care themselves are severely lacking on the evidentiary grounds. And so what is the problem if someone goes in and they later find out that it's not for them? Well, the problem can be severe depending on the sex of the person, how much intervention they had. And also just the fact that we're framing this as necessary medical care, where I think, again, I'm for trans people having access to this care. I think it's better classified as body modification, elective plastic surgery, things like this. And I feel like people should have access to them, but not under the premise that this is going to save their life or really improve their quality of life all that much, because we don't have hard evidence to prove this.
We do though, right? Like one of the biggest issues, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Yale review of the CAST study, but the Yale review is done in large part, I don't think by WPATH, but I believe that there are people that have worked under WPATH in America for a long time. And one of the issues that CAST review specifically has is the standard of evidence that it calls good evidence is well beyond the standard of evidence that we actually utilize in clinical practice, right? Because when it comes to medicine and clinical practice, we typically look for even low to moderate evidence before we begin implementing trials and whatnot to help people. Because in the case of clinical care, right, if anyone's had a doctor and they've looked at you with IBS and they're like, not really sure. There's, just so it's clear, the treatments of IBS, very weak evidence for most of it. But the doctor is going to make almost all of those recommendations and continue the process of trying to give you care, because even though there might be like weak access or weak evidence, and typically it's not that it's weak evidence. There's about medium to low evidence for gender affirming care, even for youth, but especially for adults. The evidence is really high for the massive limits that emerge in the nature of the care itself, right? RCTs are almost impossible to do with gender affirming care because, for example, none of these studies can be double blind, because if you're getting estrogen and you're a man, you're going to know if you have placebo or not because your tits aren't going to grow, or they will. And then all of a sudden you're not double blind. And if you're not double blind, you're not going to have you're going to have a crazy attrition rate, because if you're not growing the tits in 6 months and your cohort is, you're going to be like, oh, I'm on placebo. Fuck this shit. I'm out. I'm going to go try a different trial. Right. And so like the standard of evidence that CAS is demanding is well beyond the standard of evidence that we require for any other type of care. And we can maybe have a conversation about like how we improve quality of care for trans kids, because I'm all for that. I'm very, very for that. But I think we have to be very honest and fair and even-handed in how we evaluate trans care, and not put trans people and trans workers at a higher standard of expectation than we have for anybody else, just because it's a politicized topic.
The thing is, though, we're not putting trans people at a higher standard. We're putting the specific medical interventions at a different standard than we would. So interestingly, I have a friend, might be a strong word, but an acquaintance of mine who I get along with and talk with a lot on Twitter, who is a trans woman, who is a gastroenterologist, and she's like a highly regarded specialist in the field. And she and I have had very similar conversations about exactly what you just said, Erudite, right? About the low to moderate quality of evidence for a lot of IBS and IBD treatments, and that doesn't mean that we deprive people of these treatments. But again, we're talking about the intensity of the intervention, right? So we would have different standards for intervening with, something like Prozac, right? Some type of like low dose of Prozac versus open heart surgery. And those are two extreme examples, but it's not that different from what we're talking about here. Trans interventions, medical interventions, many of them are completely permanent and life-altering. They are much more serious than, trying a
When you say
diuretic, right, for
many of them,
to help with your IBS for some short-term period of time. And so I do think that yes, we can't throw away all of the healthcare for trans people just because the evidence is low to moderate, but we absolutely do need to have different standards when we're talking about such intensive intervention.
You had a question, Soypill, go ahead.
Many of it is many of it is like
Is this me?
Be the case, like
Hello? Discord working?
Was it
Am I
me
back?
or
I
you
don't know if I
guys?
was
Who
hearing
was
you.
dropping?
Who is it? Did Discord
Okay, it was all of us.
Discord is betraying me? Okay, I think we're
Oh.
back.
As long as it wasn't just me, I was like, I've had
Yeah.
so many tech issues today. I'm actually fucking off my phone.
I thought I was like, oh man, we're gonna dip. Oh no. Okay, Soy, try again. Right? You had a question. Go ahead.
Right. Well, one, I wanted you to clarify the idea of like you said most or a lot of this is irreversible. I think like of the gender affirming care treatments that I know of to be like permanent, I think surgery is obviously the one everyone thinks of. But like even puberty blockers, hormones, like all of these things, while they might have things that don't ever go away, the idea that they are like these permanent life altering things that require like this super extra scrutiny where we still allow lots of other like very necessary medical interventions like surgeries for knees or gastrointestinal or any of these other things, seems like a much higher degree of evidence specifically for things that don't cause long-term damage. Now if you're specifically talking about the bottom surgery or like I get what you're saying, but I like most of these gender.
How
is it lagging again?
Is it me again or is it you? Who's it? Who's going?
Glitching.
It's just Discord?
That was me too. You're being DDoSed?
Damn it.
I think I heard most of what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
are we just
basically,
gonna continue
one more
like
time.
this?
I'll try. Let's see. Well, then if it lags out, I guess. But my question is, it doesn't seem to be the case that any of this or most of this stuff, a very small fraction of it is this permanent, completely irreversible things. And I think what everyone thinks of when they think of that is mastectomies and bottom surgeries versus testosterone, estrogen, puberty blockers, and any of the other things that would fall under things that are not going to cause long-term, permanent, irreversible changes to your bodies, or if they are very minor things like potentially secondary sex characteristic enlargement or like bigger clits, I know is a thing that happens, but it's not like this, oh, your life is over now because you made a mistake. If you're advocating for more checks and balances for people who are going to get the most irreversible thing, I would agree. And the CAS report says that, as well as the Endocrine Society and WPATH. But if you're saying these things are mostly irreversible, I guess I'm asking you to elaborate. Like, what do you mean by that?
So, Aaron, I don't know if you want to jump in. So even I do feel like you're downplaying to a certain extent some of these things. So you're right. Not every intervention, even medical intervention, is going to be irreversible. There also are sex differences here that are notable, right? So a male who's taking estrogen and changes his mind and decides that he wants to detransition is going to have an easier time passing as his natal sex than a female who's been on testosterone for the same amount of time. And we can say, oh yeah, like your clit might grow, but this can cause like extreme discomfort, sometimes not fitting in people's underwear anymore, rubbing up against their, I mean, it's like silly,
It's
but
easier to find.
it's easier to find, but these are, these are not such simple things like, oh, it's only secondary sex characteristics. Well, that's a big deal, especially for someone who's experienced dysphoria before, who is having all of this severe distress around their secondary sex characteristics. We're in some cases, in people who regretted, who detransition, we're inducing dysphoria essentially for them, after the detransition point. And yes, I do want higher level of consideration for people who are going for those most invasive types of procedures. But actually, I even think the sort of gatekeeping solution that a lot of trans people themselves and kind of moderates in this space point towards is extremely flawed. And so I ultimately take actually more of like a radical trans activist, like the Andrea Long Chu approach, which is essentially anyone should be able to get it for basically any reason. under the category of self-determination and body modification. And so I do think in order to get to that, I think Aaron and I have similar end states where we would want sort of open informed consent, maybe different ideas of how we get there, but informed consent would mean notifying people about what the common causes and pathways to gender dysphoria are, giving people information about what they can realistically expect from these types of interventions, and not associating legal accommodations with these things either, because all of these are things that can incentivize people in the wrong way, potentially to their detriment. So I think about people who are trying to make pragmatic compromises on things like trans women in sports and in bathrooms and stuff like that. And people will say like, oh, well, we can just make the standard that trans women who have had bottom surgery, should be allowed in restrooms. And it's like, well, that might influence more trans women to have bottom surgery who wouldn't necessarily want that or need that. And that's a whole complicated thing just for them to be accepted as a trans woman. And so I don't think that we should be, I think that there's dangers of going the strict gatekeeping route as well.
Can I want to get Aaron in here a little bit, and I want to ask a question to Aaron and to Tali's side, right? Because we talk about a lot of the wide variety of medical interventions and how it's being handled in America, right? So I'm not talking about Europe or Britain or anything like that, but in America, in the West, right? How is our system handling trans healthcare? In what ways do you find it failing? In what ways do you find it harmful? What are your your biggest criticisms of the current way that the medical field and society handles trans healthcare? And I want to go to Aaron first, hear his opinion, and I want to get open up discussion like that. Go ahead, please.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm really glad you asked that, because bringing up the Cass review it doesn't really make a lot of sense in the U.S. context, because as Tali already alluded to, we don't actually keep the data. We don't do the research into actually these treatments that are being provided. There aren't assessments like people think that there are assessments. The providers, like one of the major trans healthcare providers in the U.S. is Planned Parenthood, and all you have to do as an 18-year-old girl is show up and say, I'm a trans man, I want a testosterone prescription. And they say, great, do you want to start at 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams? What? And then when you need to go get your, if you decide to go get a top surgery, you can, I'm not exactly sure actually what the requirements are currently, but for a while it was you needed two referrals from a mental health care professional. These mental health care professionals do not know what they're diagnosing either. They don't know what they're treating. They just know that the only solution for gender dysphoria is to give you what you want. And so they write this letter saying, I think that so-and-so is qualified, or I recommend or it's whatever it's a canned statement that essentially is saying, I'm recommending this top surgery for this person that I've sat with for 15 minutes and I don't actually know from Adam, but because they have no other alternative. There's no alternative treatment, and it's just, this is what you do when someone says they're trans. You give them the transition treatment. And if in Oregon, I think it's 15 years old, you can make this decision for yourself without any any guardrails, it's completely Wild West. And Erudite was referring to that there's these neurobiological correlates. If that were true, then we could test for it. We could actually determine who is trans and who isn't. But there's
That's not true. That's not true for any mental health condition, right? If you could medically just test for depression, we'd have it. But there are neural correlates associated with depression. We understand that depression's real and that you can find it and that it's a thing that we're testing for. But there isn't a part of the brain, there isn't a bundle of nuclei that I can point to and be like, there it is, there's the depression, I found it. But that doesn't exist. In fact, we don't even have good biomarkers for things like ADHD, which is an extremely genetic disorder, right? Or schizophrenia. We really just don't have these things, even though, for example, there's evidence, for example, that the putamen in at least male to female transgender people, the putamen is a part of your brain that's within the limbic system, and it is enlarged in women. And in transgender women, it is also enlarged to be closer to the volume size of women versus men, right?
It was actually measuring sexuality, that study.
The
or
Puberty study,
rather,
it was looking at
it's a
transgender. It was
proxy.
looking at men.
Oh, what? Hold
It's a
on.
proxy.
Hold on. One at a time.
Sorry, it's a proxy. So what they're identifying as trans women's brains is what they're seeing in effeminate homosexual brains, essentially. And so it's a proxy for homosexuality. The neural correlates that we have are for homosexuality, not specifically for being a trans
So
woman.
there's
So
gay
for
brains, is
example,
what you're telling me?
those neural correlates do not hold if the trans woman is attracted to women, which makes up something like 89% of the self-report of like the largest study of transgender adults that we have. And I don't use that as a boogeyman. I'm very pro-transbian. All my
Sure, but this
followers
isn't the only neural
on Twitter
correlate.
are basically that. But
This isn't the only
neural
sure,
correlates are literally
Well,
for
let
homosexuality.
let
They don't
Erudite
hold
go.
for
They're
the
not.
overwhelming majority of trans people.
They're just not as well though. And the issue is that the neural correlates that might like precede sex, I've looked at the studies as well, right? When you look at changes in like the
Did it control
Hold on,
for
let
sexual orientation?
let Erudite go
So-
for a minute, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it was looking at specifically, it was, I don't know, I'll have to go through all of the specific studies. I don't have I'm looking at like 9 etiological studies right now. So in another study, there was a reversal of the INAH3 in the subnucleus of the hypothalamus, right? That we see in transgender people. Now again, this could or could not be something, right?
Homosexual trans
It
people.
wasn't,
It is. If you look it up, I understand what you're saying, and if you look it up, that is what you're going to find. So we do have neural correlates, and by the way, homosexuality is an etiology. It's a known pathway to gender dysphoria and to trans identification. So it's not surprising that we would see these neural correlates, but they don't actually hold when you control for sexual orientation.
but again, that might not even disclude anything, and I'm not going to fully grant to you. I'll look for
It
it.
excludes
Right?
something like
You gotta let me
89%
finish my speech.
trans
You gotta let
women.
me finish what I'm saying. You gotta let me
Sure.
finish what I'm saying. The issue is that if we have a consistent potential theory, we know that sexual dimorphism begins around the 3rd week of development, and we know that there are some key areas that are being developed within the limbic system, and there is some level of sexual dimorphism that we expect to emerge. There is reasonable to believe that it's possible that this is where transgenderism might be burgeoning from, and it is quite likely that the pathways and parts of our brain that are important for sexuality might be similarly aligned next to gender in the same way that it seems like autism is somewhere within these correlates as well. But nobody would say that because autism and transgenderism might share similar neural correlates that now both of them aren't true, right? Because if that were true, then OCD wouldn't exist either, and neither would addiction.
Well, but that's not
because
what we're
addiction
saying.
And OCD, well, it is what you're saying, right? You're being like, well,
No,
these
because I'm
neural
not saying that
correlates- hold on,
autism.
you know,
I think autism, gender, and sexuality. I think those things are closely linked. So it doesn't surprise me at all that we see similar patterns in neural correlates. So I'm not
What
saying
you're
none of
doing,
these
though,
things
is you're saying
exist. I'm saying
none
they're
of these
not
neural
pointing to what we think they're pointing to.
Okay. I
what
know
I'm saying,
everyone
what I'm
wants to
saying
get
is
in.
that they're suggestive of the things that we're pointing to, right? Because if we were going to reduce neural correlates down, then yeah, we don't really know the difference super well between things like addiction and OCD because a lot of them happen in the same areas of the brain. But obviously, we think that OCD and addiction are different because of their phenomenological presentation. And so this isn't to say, yes, here's transgenderism in the brain. I've never said that that's the case. What I'm saying is there are neural correlate pathways that we are seeing consistently, repeating over and over, that yes, have comorbidities with other things. But it's important to look at these things and go, this is something that is reasonably legitimate. There's no reason to believe that it isn't legitimate.
One of the issues or the I guess the criticisms of trans-affirming healthcare I hear does center around homosexuality. However, can she still hear us? I hope so, because this is kind of addressed at her.
Took her headphones off, so possibly not.
Oh no. Okay. But okay. Hopefully she's okay. I'll just say it anyway, and when she gets back, if she can't hear us.
No, she's back.
Oh, she's just getting a drink. Okay, she's back. Wonderful. No, it's fine. It's fine. But this was kind of referring to what you were saying, so I wanted you to be here to hear it. So one of the criticisms I hear about trans-affirming healthcare is that it is erasing homosexuality and misidentifying someone who is homosexual as trans. And would that not be important? Or if what Tali is saying is true about how 89% of these people are just homosexual,
She's saying the opposite.
That's actually the
Okay,
opposite.
the opposite of what you're saying? Okay, maybe I misheard then.
But your question is still valid and is I think pertinent and one that we should address. But it is the statistics are the opposite. And when I'm talking about homosexual and heterosexual, just for clarity, I'm talking based on sex, so not gender identity. So
Yeah, but I guess what guardrails are currently in place to make sure that we aren't just misidentifying someone who is just homosexual and saying, well, actually, you're trans? Do we know? What are the current guardrails in the, and I'm asking this to Erudite and to Soy Pill, what are the current guardrails in the system, if any?
I don't know.
I don't have WPATH memorized personally. I'm not quite sure. I suspect that there are guardrails for this, right? I imagine that there are going to be questions. For example, typically when kids are doing this, they're taught to say in gender reference clinics, they're typically taught to say that they aren't gay or anything like that, or questioning their sexuality, so that they can move on to gender affirming care, right? And so it sounds like there is some level of checking to try to affirm whether or not this is sexuality. And to be clear, I would never deny that there's going to be some level of comorbidity. You guys are shaking your head. I'm dubious that WPATH is so negligent in so many ways that they're not in any ways wanting to see off ramps, because I'm reading through Yale right now. Do you have any evidence of WPATH being so negligent that they actively want to just see kids getting harmed?
they don't want to do.
Hold on.
Sure.
Aaron is saying yes. I want to hear what Aaron has to say real quick. Aaron, you're saying yes?
I don't think they want to see kids harmed, but I was literally at the WPATH's conference in 2023 when they were unveiling the Standards of Care 8, and I asked them how they can determine, or how is there any way to determine the difference between a kid who's going to grow up to be cis and a kid who's going to grow up to be trans, and I was kicked out of the conference for asking it. They have no answer. I was just repeatedly called transphobic for even asking.
Yeah, so here's one of the problems, and this is, I think, something that everyone here can relate to. We're living in such a polarized political environment, and so everyone kind of bunkers down on their sides. And so I don't think that there's some conspiracy, again, to withhold the truth or to hurt anybody here. I think that, and what we've seen actually come out in recent years, and as recently as a couple of days ago, is there are researchers and people high up in WPATH who are nervous about any crack being used against them and being used against trans people and barring trans people from getting access to care. So they are afraid that if we show that some of the evidence here was lacking, or some of the gatekeeping mechanisms here are lacking, that the Republicans are going to come and take their health care away. And by the way, that seems to be founded in some reality, right? So there's understandable reasons for them doing this, but that is what happened. And so just to address the sexuality component specifically, you are partially correct that historically, especially, trans people would go into the health center and they were actually told to say they were gay based on their birth sex, right? That they were attracted to the same sex, so that when they transitioned, they would be a straight couple, right? Because it was the purpose of this intervention was to only select the trans people who they believed could normalize into society. They didn't want to be creating more gay people. So a trans woman attracted to women would go in and lie and say, I'm attracted to men. And that would help her go through and get the treatment that she wanted, deserved, was entitled to, whatever. We don't have this problem anymore. You cannot reject someone for medical intervention, trans medical intervention, based on their sexual orientation. So I don't think we have high occurrences of people lying about their sexual orientation. One thing that we have is a huge conflation, because providers are not assessing, they're not at least defining their terms. So they're not even assessing whether the person in their office is answering their sexual orientation based on gender identity or based on their sex. And so a lot of, especially the younger cohort, they're going in and calling themselves gay. You'll have young females going in and calling themselves gay. What they mean by that is they are attracted to men. They are heterosexuals who see themselves as gay trans men. But those questions are not even being asked. So we have.
Can I ask, Tali, because this
no.
has been going on for a while, and I've been wondering this since the beginning, which is I do not know the WPATH specific requirements when they ask these questions. However, when this idea that this is conflating some sort of homosexuality into transness, if they're looking for and trying to identify people with gender dysphoria, how much of this dysphoria is attributed to the idea that they are attracted to a certain sex? And how is that at all going to play into the diagnosis, other than, well, I think I'm straight or I think I'm gay, therefore I must be trans because because one of these things is mismatched, and not, hey, my body actually genuinely feels wrong. I feel genuine mental distress looking at the secondary sexual characteristics that don't match what's in my brain, which seems to be much more of the indicators that I have heard that is tested for, not who you're attracted to.
So, interestingly enough, I think it's kind of funny because Aaron and I push back. We don't have many fans in the gender critical space either, which is, whatever. But Aaron and I push back vociferously on this claim, like, stop transing gay kids, stop transing the gay away. We don't think that is happening in the overwhelming majority of cases. The overwhelming majority of cases, I have no concern that these are true gay boys and gay girls who are going down a path that is not right for them. There is let's say 10% of the trans population who is homosexual. I don't think that's a reason for them not to transition. Again, homosexuality has been seen as one etiology, one pathway for gender dysphoria for at least the last, honestly, like the last 100 years, right? Because they saw it as sort of like sexual inversion, but even seriously within the last 30 and 40 years. So it's always been acknowledged that for whatever reason, homosexuality can be a predisposition for developing this severe gender dysphoria and sex distress. And I think that the sex distress and gender dysphoria is good enough reason for someone to transition. I don't think someone should be barred from transitioning because they're homosexual or because they're heterosexual.
So,
however,
go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, it's interesting the groups that Kyla delineated a bit in the beginning. I think actually the group that we need to have the most concern about, ironically, is the group who from the time they were 2 or 3 are projecting this gender incongruence, because that group is actually the most likely to desist. So ironically, the group who has this sort of onset of severe gender dysphoria, not necessarily rapid, but let's say adolescent onset of gender dysphoria, is slow progression, not influenced by their friends. They grow up in a religious commune or something like this, right? That tends to be persistent across their lifetime. So it's actually the very young, sort of effeminate or super tomboy kids who the desistance literature tells us are more likely to be the ones to grow up and desist and to come to terms with their birth sex and identify as a homosexual when they are an
How much
adult.
of that is because the literature that would be looking, so for example, most of the literature that looks at desistance is older literature, because the reality is that the clinical options for desistance aren't offered anymore, right? There isn't really a pushback on gender anymore. But one of my issues with the literature as well is that you're looking at a group of kids that are probably the most severe potentially in their gender dysphoria because they're presenting so early. And so the data showing that they desist the most is there's a lot of issues with the desistance data that I won't even necessarily get into here, that we're citing from about the 70s to 90s. But on top of that, this group is being viewed as the most likely to desist because that's probably the only group that even got studied in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Because if you're 12 and 15 and starting to feel this, you're probably massively shunted away and probably not often included. I don't think people were even thinking of these people by the time they were 15. They just thought they were a weird 15-year-old who then becomes a weird adult, and nobody cares that much about weird adults, right? That's my suspicion. And so even saying that like the 2 to 3 are the most likely to desist, I'm extremely skeptical of, because all the early data on this population is oftentimes biased in the pressure to not see this population exist and emerge. And there is a high level of conversion type therapy, which does not have good outcomes for gay kids or for trans kids. Even though they might desist, the quality of life that they lead afterward is not typically very high, right? And same with gay kids who desist being gay from conversion therapy as well. And so one of the issues is that one of the issues that we're all going to be running into here is going to be the paucity of literature on this population, right? For example, the things that you're pointing out of the studies that show the neurocorrelate differentiation. You're right. Most of the studies that look back, they don't have the control for homosexuality. The issue is that that doesn't mean that the evidence of the neurocorrelates now doesn't exist. It means that you need further studies with further levels of grouping done, which good luck doing. We can barely get research for just longitudinal studies on these things because everyone doesn't want to do it. But on top of that, just because there is transness and homosexuality being comorbid, it doesn't mean that both of these constructs aren't real, which is why I agree this data has to separate them. But that also isn't evidence, because I think a lot of people would take away from your statements that if it's not controlling for homosexuality, then the neurocorrelates that we're finding is just gay kids. And it's like, that's probably not true.
Well, but again, I want to reiterate, gay people can be trans too. hashtag free the gays. So I don't think
Sure,
that
but that's not
when I
really a
think
response to what I'm saying, right? I've never even implied that gay kids can't also be trans. What we're talking about is the separation of kids who think they are trans and they end up just being gay. And it's really important to understand that these neural correlates can overlap and both of these groups can be true and that third group can be true. That's what I'm trying to argue.
Sure, yeah, and I'm not disputing any of that. What I'm saying is, especially when we're talking about youth intervention, and again, my understanding, Kyla, is that you have reservations about youth intervention. And so my concern is this is the group who's going to be having the earliest intervention because they have the earliest onset, when this is really the only group, like you point out, that we really have any information about desistance on. And it shows that let's even use the lowest estimate, right? Something like maybe 50 to 60% of them might grow up and be able to assimilate into their sex.
Can you
So
guys
I
answer?
think we need to be very
Can you guys answer a question for me that I have, real quick? You keep mentioning, youth care, right? And especially with these interventions on this cohort of people who are 2 to 3 when they express these signs of dysphoria. What commonly happens? Walk me through the steps. 2 or 3-year-old, someone starts talking about how they may have dysphoria. This gets brought up and brought toward the attention of a medical professional. What is the path that is currently, what happens to them?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, especially Aaron, if you're trans. You probably know better than me. But my understanding is that up until like even pre-pubescent children, it's almost all social transition. So that might be trying to express your gender a different way, maybe going by a different name, pronouns, but almost no medical or physical like interactions are happening at that point. And then once you get to prepubescent, that's when they start recommending potentially puberty blockers, then or hormones, and then past through puberty and past puberty is when maybe they'll suggest mastectomies, maybe some surgeries if that is recommended. But it's a whole spectrum, and that's why at the beginning we tried to talk about this umbrella of gender affirming care. Not everyone needs a surgery or thinks they need a surgery. Not everyone, some people like only want to be socially transitioned and they just shave their arms and like grow their hair out. And so it's not this like all encompassing like yes or no. It is when and where and to what degree do they need what they need.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. Well, what does anyone have a problem with that? If we are not okay, as some people have expressed reservations with youth trans care, what's wrong with that? With what you just expressed?
The social transition is actually pretty monumental when you're talking about a child's development.
Okay.
It can really kind of cement the opposite sex identity that could have otherwise just sort of been kids have phases.
So to be clear, Aaron, you're against it, is what I'm hearing.
I'm against. Yes,
Okay.
I'm against social transition for children. Yeah.
Okay, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify.
Oh
your
no,
position.
but for that reason, because it cements this opposite sex identity that could otherwise have been potentially outgrown, and then it's when they start approaching puberty that that physical dysphoria is going to set in, where they could have otherwise avoided it, right? If they didn't have internalized this sense of supposed to be the opposite sex, everyone around them is using opposite sex pronouns, like they have this entire opposite sex understanding of themselves, and then puberty just becomes this really existential threat of where your body is going to change in all these ways that, are completely contradictory to this identity that has been formed around you by adults. And it's just really, I think, not just for their own sense of identity, it's very, I think, destabilizing about like just kind of like biology, like material reality in general. If boys can be girls and girls can be boys, and there's just I just think on a much greater level than just personal identity, it seems quite dangerous to instill this idea in children. But then once you get into the fact of like puberty blockers and really kind of stunting maturation and development, it's just there's a lot of negatives, I think, all around. When in
Can I ask,
more
Aaron?
often than not, if we weren't in this current cultural moment, the kids would have outgrown it.
My question for that, Aaron, is like, I'm sure this has happened to some degree. Obviously, like maybe someone who is questioning their gender gets socially affirmed, may like be pushed over that line of not deciding, hey, actually this isn't for me because of this, like, people around them. That's very possible. But my question
Well,
is,
just
like,
think of how hard it is. Think of how hard it is to walk it back. Like, especially as a kid, right? Like how hard it is to change your mind, and especially if you made a big stink about something, right? And you were really insistent that everyone like adjust to this new thing, and everyone finally does. It's really, really
Tali,
hard.
Sure, but then at that point, the
can I push back
policy.
on this? Wait, let me just say one thing, Erudite, because yes, obviously, if you have this very adamant thing that you're pushing for super hard, it might be this sort of like shameful thing to go back on it. But you could say the exact same thing for going into being trans, if not more, because so many people reject that entire concept. It's like this entire society, most of society is like pushing against you, and you're trying to push against that and say, no, actually, I am not what is natural. So like this idea of like, yeah, maybe they would otherwise say they regret it, but are lying, or like they don't want to, like, they're doubling down. Like, I don't think that's a good explanation for why there's only like a 0.3 to 3% regret rate from the people that do any of this gender affirming care. That just
We have
doesn't.
no, just to be clear, we have no information on regret and detransition. So to claim any number
No
is
information.
no, yes, like literally none, extremely low quality. We
That's not literally none.
the
That's the best information we have. You can say that it's not good
The best
enough, and I would
information
agree
we
it's
the best
understudied, but
and
that's not
most
no
up-to-date
information.
information we have is from a trans researcher named Kinnan McKinnon, and his research shows something closer to 5 to 15% detransition rates. Nowhere close to 0.3%. And again, he's
That's not
pro-trans, he's a
what I
trans
read.
man himself. His interest in detransition is to strengthen trans healthcare. So that is the most up-to-date research that we have, qualitative and quantitative information about detransition. But again, it's going to be lacking because of the decentralized nature of American healthcare system. So this is why I say we have no information. The data set that anyone can pull from is extraordinarily limited. So we should be the number could be 1%, but it could be it's not. I know it's not 50%, but my point is to say anything below 1% is we're just making it up at that point.
Sure. The issue is that, like, if we're talking about if we're talking about interventions and invasive interventions, which, by the way, we do very severe interventions with low to moderate grade quality evidence all the time, like that are standard procedures. People just don't think about them because identity isn't tied to them, right? I think part of the reason why people get so upset about the trans stuff specifically is because identity has prescriptions for how people engage with you, right? And so it becomes this weird thing where if somebody gets a stent in their heart and they're a stable angina, okay, well, there's low to moderate evidence that that's actually effective for non-acute anginas, but also it doesn't affect anyone's life. Nobody gives a fuck. It has
You're an
no
angina.
social ramifications whatsoever. What?
Just angina was a funny word. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah, sounds like
I was
vagina.
gonna say,
I was like,
I'm
you're an
just not sexy,
angina.
but-
I'm not an angina. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Sounds like vagina for all of you 5-year-olds out there. Okay.
just wanna
Yeah.
clear up for
Vagina.
Tali. Real quick, I do want to clear up. Can I just clear up really quickly? That
Yeah.
0.3%, and then like where that comes from is from that 2023 study from maybe that is that the Jared? Is that the one you said? And that's not a regret rate. That is 0.3% of people in this group of almost 2,000 people requested a surgery reversal. So there's probably maybe some people that like, hey, I don't want to put in the money, or I'm doubling down on this because now my body is like that. That would put a little higher than that. I'll concede that, but I don't think I'm not saying that like it's a 0.3% regret rate, although that is how I decided. But it's an incredibly low amount of people that are like, this is not what I wanted, according to this, not a regret
Right.
rate. But
Of the number of people who are going back to the same doctors even to request these types of revisions or reversals. This is another thing that Lisa Lippman found also in some of her research into detransition is that a majority of the people that she surveyed did not go back to their healthcare provider to let them know that they had detransitioned or to request additional care. That for various reasons, but the majority of them were not even notifying their
Right.
healthcare provider.
So this is
So there
also
are
getting-
limitations.
Right.
There are
and this-
limitations.
Surgeries
in what
cannot be
we allow.
reversed. They did, yeah, that's-
Right, not to the same degree that they can be done, right? And so when I am conflating this in the numbers of as well, people self-reported regret as well, right? So that's like kind of unfortunately the best way, which is not great. It's self-reported, but still seems to be incredibly low. So just to clear that up. Not to say like, oh, you're super wrong. I agree. This is understudied. This is not the best quality evidence, and it's very hard to track longitudinally like these people at the same doctors and the same case studies, like even if they like move around. But like to the best of our knowledge, these rates are still incredibly low. And that's the whole idea of why I brought this up, is this idea that oh, people are afraid to go back on it because they're like, oh, well, and this is, by the way, including all gender affirming care, not just surgeries that are harder to reverse. This is including social transitions, which is why a lot of this data is a little muddied for detransition rates, because this includes non-binary people who, are like, I am questioning my gender, or maybe I could go either way. And then if they go back to what they were born as their birth gender, this is called a desist, which is not really a desist, because just because you're questioning your gender and then decide, hey, I actually pick one of the two things
Hold
that I
on.
was already going to pick.
Hold on. There are a lot of people that I've heard, right, say that non-binary is a form of trans, right? Like, I've heard that being said.
No,
right?
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's because those people are identified as trans when they're like, hey, I'm not, like, say you're born male and you're like, hey, I'm not really sure if I want to identify this way or this feels right to me. And then you're like, actually, no, it is. And they haven't really done any surgery or even any hormones. They were just like, maybe I want to express a little differently in public, maybe a little more androgynous. And now I'm going back to doing what society would call more masculine. That's called desisting, which is very different from someone, going through hormones and stopping. Erudite.
I just want to be clear. Regret rates, I'm assuming there are going to be reasonably high regret rates for people who end up desisting and had major interventions. That would make total sense to me. I'd be shocked if somebody went through a high level of proceduralism and then decided that they weren't trans anymore and didn't regret it because they fucked up their entire life, right? So I would totally grant regret rates. The issue is that even people who get surgeries that are life-saving, there are multiple, I think the regret rate for cancer surgeries, life-saving cancer surgeries, is anywhere from like 17 to 40%. Right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying that there aren't regret rates, and I'm not saying that those regret rates don't matter. What I'm saying is that we are doing a disservice to trans people by holding the medical practice itself to a standard we are not holding any other practice to. And the reason that I am submitting that we are holding these double standards for trans care versus cancer care versus any other anesthesiology is because fundamentally it's identity based, and we don't like identity stuff because identity has prescriptions and requirements of other people. If I now identify as a man, you are required as a decent person to engage with me in certainly socially scripted different ways, right? And so this is what I'm asking for. I'm asking for a lack of the double standards things to be acknowledged and to be dropped down so that we're being even handed across the board.
So
Let's speak about the regret situation, because it's very, very complicated and almost impossible to measure for these reasons. The decentralized nature of this healthcare, as we've already talked about, it's like the person that you go to, the provider that you go to get your hormone prescription is a completely different person than you go to get your top surgery, is a completely different person, provider, clinic, etc., that you go to get your orchiectomy or whatever it is you're having done. These are not centralized clinics. It is not holistic supervised care like it is in Europe. In the US, it's completely just patient driven. And so if if somebody has gone on testosterone for 5 years and been like, shit, I hate what I look like now, I don't want to look like a man, I'm going to undo this, they're not going to go back to their endocrinologist and say, undo this testosterone, because it doesn't work that way. It's like you just stop. If you haven't had a hysterectomy, your body just goes back to producing the normal estrogen, and you just live your life as best you can somewhere in the middle. And some of those effects will slowly
as a virilized
that's
female.
probably
Sure,
fine,
but again,
right? And then like
but again,
this being not
this-
recorded in these stats is probably like irrelevant if these people are doing what is irreversible versus going and getting a surgery, which I agree, if you're going to a different doctor, would affect those stats. But just stopping a hormone, and like you said, if you don't have the hysterectomy, it's going to put you back pretty much to where you were before. Then
It's going to
this
put your
won't really
levels
matter.
back. It doesn't put you back.
Sure, but
Aaron
again,
is saying your body will
we're
go back
doing-
to producing. Aaron's saying your
Hold
body
on.
will go back
We're
to
doing the
producing
double
estrogen
standards
or
thing though again.
testosterone.
We're doing the double standards thing again, right? The idea that it's impossible to capture desistance because you're decentralized. It's harder in America, but we capture desistance and dissatisfaction with desistance in multiple areas. It just takes a little bit more like better thinking. And first of all, obviously, I don't want to shift this into a universal healthcare policy because I agree. Yeah, base universal healthcare, fucking better for research especially. It's way better. I agree with that. But the issue is that you're doing a bit of a weird slip where you're saying, well, because we don't have the same healthcare system, the results of the psychological ramifications of these treatments can't be generalized to American people. And it's like, well, that's not true. Unless there's something phenomenologically different between like American and Canadian trans people, other than universal healthcare. In fact, in the case of in this case, I'm assuming that these are generalizing, especially because the study sample sizes are large enough to apply the generalization. You would need to suggest to me why, in the case in American people, their level of dissatisfaction with desistance would be astronomically higher than an American or vice versa. That's what we need to outline.
Well, I'm not saying that these are different patient populations. I'm saying that the way that the treatment is provided is completely different, and we can't measure it because it isn't being tracked. There isn't, like, I'm not saying that these are different people at all. I'm saying just the way the healthcare is provided is completely different. And it's not just a case of, so when you're talking about a double standard, it's like, this is where the trans population is being incredibly underserved and mistreated, is because there is no actual guidelines for, there's no holistic care here. It's entirely, well, it's up to you to figure out where you're going to get this, hormone, or it's up to you where you're going to get your, top surgery done. And these different providers have their own different requirements, whether or not they are covered under Medicaid or take insurance or whatever. Like, it's just completely haphazard, and there's no oversight, and you don't even have to really have a diagnosis of this condition in order to seek these interventions. And so when we're talking about regret, and like that 3% who go back to try to get a surgery reverse, basically no one does that. Like you have this surgery, you regret the surgery, but you just go on living your life with your body the way that it is now, because it cannot be undone.
Why wouldn't you get fake breasts? Why wouldn't you get fake breasts? Like, say somebody gets a mastectomy, the most common trans surgery, and they end up regretting it. What would be the process by which, like you're saying, they just go on living, they don't report it? Well, I believe that they don't report it to some degree, although lots of people do go back to their primary caregiver or go back to their endocrinologist and report like dissatisfaction. Endocrine specifically, I suspect, would be higher levels of people checking back in about desistance, because they probably want to know the safest ways for them to stop taking T or to start taking things, hormone replacement.
They often see a different provider. Well, because they, again, from the information, and we're all agreeing that there's a paucity of information here, but from the information that we do have, they don't go back to the same providers, even if they do. So I agree with Aaron that a lot of people, they just stop. And again, I don't want to turn this into anecdotes because it's not helpful, but like Aaron especially, but we've spoken to a tremendous amount of people who are trans, who have detransitioned, who have detransitioned and retransitioned, and have been at all different points in this process. The majority just cease, and the ones who do seek care are looking for care from different providers. They don't feel like, and again, this is a lot of the providers, even the ones that they do go back to, tell them, there is nothing I can do for you, or I don't know what to do for you, because we have no protocols on detransition. So we have no protocols on trying to reset people or anything of that nature. And why wouldn't people go on to get breast augmentation? Number one, a lot of these people have what they conceptualize as medical trauma. They're not interested in doing any further risky medical interventions, which is understandable. It's also a lot of these mastectomies, they are taking out. I'm not a doctor here, but they are taking out everything. Okay, right? So it's making it a much more complicated reconstruction than to just have like a breast augmentation or something. So it's a much more complicated procedure once you've done a radical bilateral mastectomy.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the breast
I'm
tissue is
not saying
entirely
that they
removed.
would.
The chest is very tight, and like with trans women, they take estrogen. They produce a lot of excess skin and flesh there that they can be filled out with fake breasts. But when you've had your existing breast tissue removed, and then then the skin just stitched around, like I've heard of one person trying to undo it, and she basically had like her chest inflated to a certain degree, and it was very painful to ultimately get like these little basically breast mounds that look nothing like actual breasts after the fact. And again, for that reason, basically no one seeks to undo a top surgery because, just a lot more pain and heartache for something that's not going to look like your original body.
Probably most importantly, there's just no research into it, right? And so there probably is actual medical interventions that could be created, that could be offered to individuals, and there could be recommendations of a non-removal of mammary glands and future mastectomies if there's any chance of like potential desistance, right? I'm not opposed to any of these things by any means, right? I'm super open to that. Part of the reason that you're going to have with desisters in having any level of interventionism is because you're now talking about a microgroup of an already microgroup. There's already an issue with getting enough people to study in transgender transgender research, let alone getting enough people to study transgender people who end up regretting and then desist research, right? And I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, that it shouldn't matter. The issue is that the desistance research shouldn't be used as argumentation to take away from trans care necessarily. We really shouldn't be holding these two things together because, again, there are plenty of people who come to regret even things like hip surgeries, but that doesn't mean that we don't make recommendations for hip surgeries. We look at the issues that people have had in the past and we update hip surgeries to try to make them better implementable into people's lives.
So I agree with you. I think okay, there were a few things there, but I'll just start at the end. So the comparison to other types of interventions like hip surgery, like IBD interventions, like cancer treatments, difference here, the comparison is more apt when we're talking about depression and anxiety and schizophrenia and things like this. But when we're talking about medical complications that we have a strong evidentiary basis for the issue, for the disease, for the problem, that is very different from what we have with gender dysphoria because it
No, it's
is.
not. No, it's not in this case. When we're talking about low to moderate evidence, we can really do things like comparing stents in acute, in like non-acute angines
No,
to this.
we can't because these things are entirely different in kind. They are characteristically entirely different. So we're talking about a cognitive and psychological phenomenon with
Sure.
neural correlates, with all these other things, as compared to someone with a broken hip, right, or cancer that
Of
is
course, of
spreading and
course.
proliferating in
Hold
their
on, just to
body.
pause
So
you.
and
The
so
analogy,
I'm
hold
not
on. No,
saying
hold
that
on,
we
hold
should
on,
get
stop,
rid.
stop, stop, stop. Just to pause you, I want to back us up. Nowhere at any point is the analogy of a hip to transgenderism, because I think being transgender is like having a deteriorated hip, right? The comparison, the analogy that's being made there is interventionism, the level of intervention,
But
invasiveness.
the conflation even, you're saying being trans and having a busted hip. No, it's gender dysphoria, right? It's sex dysphoria and having a busted hip. And what we and the way that we can
Sure, but if
actually
you're being,
determine
well,
and
again,
diagnose these
Tali,
things.
if you're being good faith with me at all, obviously you understand that when I'm saying being trans, I'm talking about gender dysphoric people because I'm not actually.
And clinicians who are raising their concerns, that is not the motivation of a lot of trans people who are raising their concerns. And so I think the good faith needs to go both ways, basically. There are a lot of people who are sincerely concerned about these things, and it's not because they don't want to touch the trans identity thing.
But Tali, another
Right, but
issue here is
again, I just got to go back. I got to hold my frame here. When I'm talking about the identity piece, I'm not saying like I'm not being bad faith and saying you guys just hate trans people, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are double standards of expectations of evidence for trans interventionism that get outlined in things like the CAS study and in this argument here that we do not hold the same standards for other invasive protocols
because they are different conditions.
Of course, they are different conditions, but we have to analogize some things at some times and draw levels of comparison, right? And so the reason that I'm submitting as to why we have pediatric care with low to moderate evidence and high levels of interventionalism that people are just okay with and they're not okay with trans stuff is because of that identity piece. And it's not because I think people, like, I don't think you guys are trying to attack trans people and say that they are bad and don't exist. I'm saying the psychological element of the identity piece makes things feel bigger and therefore people don't engage with them in like fair levels. So when we're talking about interventionalism and invasiveness, then we have to compare it to the closest that we have, which would be other invasive things and the level of evidence that we have for these invasive things and if we're holding everyone to similar standards, right? That's what I'm talking about.
Then we need
When
to do that. We need to do
physiological
that.
pieces,
Fine,
we
but then we need to
Tali,
do that
can I
on
supplement
both
this too?
axes.
Just one last
Hold on.
thing. Can I just supplement?
Hold on,
I
sorry.
just want
We
to
need to
supplement. I
do
don't
it-
want to add another argument. I just want to just like really shortly, like because Erudite speaks longer than I do, and I'm a slow, simple man. So my understanding of this too is that yeah, with something like knee surgery, right? This is something that is like not analogous in the same way to gender dysphoria as we have like empirical, concrete, like here is your fucked up knee, right? Versus like, hey, this is a psychological thing. It's much harder to diagnose. And in these surgeries, we're seeing a higher regret rate, but we're not using this as an argument to take away knee surgery. It's an argument to, hey, maybe we need to improve these surgeries, or maybe we need to do something different here, and not, hey, this is a reason now we should never do this again, or that we should make this even harder for people to get. Just, hey, this could be worse, and even for a more empirically severe condition versus gender dysphoria, where it seems to not have the same regret rates to the same extent. Maybe that's understudied, but that's not an argument to not give the care to the people who are clearly reporting that it makes their lives better.
Sure. And I appreciate that you brought up the difference there, because that's what I was trying to say, is if we're going to do these comparisons, and I agree we need to be fair, but we need to consider both of the axes here, right? So we need to be fair in comparing it to other low to moderate efficacious interventions, even of the same level of intervention, like you're saying. We also need to compare it to the type. I wish I had better, smarter sounding words here, but the type of diagnosis of issue that we have here, right? So we also need to look at it.
Construct itself, yes.
Sure,
like
sure, right. We need to
deteriorating hips are
compare
not
it
the same
against other cognitive and psychiatric
I
disorders,
appreciate
not
smart
just
and
these
dumb
medical,
words. So it's all
not
good.
just these medical diagnoses that are much clearer to diagnose, if not much clearer to treat. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not trying to take this care away. I have very severe issues and concerns with the framing of this care, because I don't think it's an honest system right now. I think it's got lots of good intentions, but I don't think the system is honest and working in the best, is working best for trans people. So I want trans people and people with dysphoria to have access to HRT. I want them to be cautious with surgery, especially with bottom surgeries, because these are very risky. But I want people to have access to all of these things. I don't think the current framework that we have right now is working. And again, I'm not even necessarily asking for
When you
higher
say
levels
it's
of
not
gatekeeping.
working,
I think
what
we
does
need
that mean?
transparency in what the data actually is. We need transparency in what the process actually is. Right now, we have a system that kind of funnels people into the next intervention, like Aaron is saying, with all of these things very separated and without a holistic, cohesive intervention plan. And also the types of things, here's the thing too. And again, this is perhaps controversial, but it bears discussing. Even looking into the low to moderate evidence that we have, we need to look at what they're actually measuring, right? And what these constructs are. And so we don't necessarily see improvements in things like career aspects, like interpersonal relationships, like overall health functioning, like depression, like anxiety. What we see very often in these studies is a low dissatisfaction rate, a decrease in reported gender dysphoria, and an increase in self-reported satisfaction, basically,
Okay,
and
but
quality of life.
Tali,
And these things,
to finish your statement, but then I have a question for you, please.
these things are important, but even then, right, we need to tell people exactly what they can expect, and we need to be really looking down at what these constructs are. And so, like we said, there's already, like, just looking at satisfaction is not the most important thing, in a similar way that just looking at people's satisfaction or regret with a knee surgery that might have been medically necessary, even if it's risky and has all of these other negative side effects that people come to regret. I want to take a specific example. So, Wick, I don't know if you want to intervene with your question, but I want to go sort of deep into one of the measures just to kind of highlight what I think these problems are.
Okay, go ahead. But I guess while you do that, have my question in mind. Let me get it out before I forget it. You keep saying things, and I hear you and Aaron say, like, the system's broken, the system's not working, the system's not doing what it should do. And what I hear from you, and when I ask that, like, what's happening, it seems to be the answer that you give is, well, we're not measuring these things as much as we should be. We're not recording these things as much as we should be. The reporting on this is bad, and that's fair. But I don't know if that means that it's broken necessarily. If, as you say, that most people who go through these treatments, it seems to help them, then why would that not be working? Go ahead.
So I again, like, it seems to help them in some ways and not necessarily always. But the problem, I think, what me and Aaron are alluding to, is we don't really know exactly how many people it's helping and to what degree. And because of many of the reasons that people already brought up here, of the concern about this healthcare being weaponized against trans people and being taken away from them, even within the trans community, it's an open secret that people don't talk openly about surgical complications, about complications that they have in transition, because they don't want to take the opportunity away from somebody else. Their mindset is, it didn't work for me, but I don't want to take this away from somebody else. And this works to the detriment of other trans people. And again, there are people who are open about this, and it's for a very good reason.
Can we pause that right there? Because I agree. I understand what you're saying. When you say, look, there might be someone who would otherwise have not done it because they hear a story from someone who has some sort of medical complication, like with a plasty or something like that. And I'm sure that would cause harm to that person who might have discovered that. But that's not an argument to get rid of the care, because the reason they're
don't
not
want to get rid of
telling
the
that,
care.
I know, I'm just saying, Sure, hold on. I'm not saying you do, but it's like, this is an argument to say that, yeah, we should inform people that there are possible complications if they're going to go through this surgery, which is also what we've been saying since the beginning. Like, yeah, there should be some sort of holistic, multifaceted, multi-step process with psychologists and doctors that say, hey, we're going to make sure you understand completely what is about to happen to you if you want to continue doing this. But to say that this is like harming them on a grander scale than if those people were weaponized, which they are, a lot of detransitioners are weaponized to take away the healthcare completely. I know you're not advocating for that. I would say that's much more of a concern if we see the positive outcomes on a larger degree for most of these people versus the negative ones.
Yes, much more of a concern, and neither of those are good reasons to withhold data or to withhold information from potential clients, from providers, from the general public, from the scientific community. And again, this is what we are actually seeing amongst top researchers in the field, is they are withholding the data because it doesn't show the excessively positive outcomes. It shows neutral to moderately positive outcomes. So I want to hone in again on one specific thing. So I'm assuming I told you guys about this last night, but I'm assuming at least Kyle that you already knew about this. But the youth gender affirming care, the model that we use today, the very different model that we use in the United States, originated in the Netherlands. It's referred to as the Dutch protocol. And these were the first researchers to use puberty blockers as a staged intervention for kids with gender dysphoria. And essentially, it was taken to be this great success. It was brought over to the UK. It was then brought over to the United States, and it's proliferated all throughout Europe. And this is the research that started this this intervention for children. If you actually go into the research, you see that the number one positive outcome, the highest positive or increase, right? Positive effect, or in this case, it's a decrease, was a decrease in gender dysphoria. Okay. They showed a significant decrease in gender dysphoria and an increase with satisfaction with their body and with their gender. When you go into the methods, the measure that they used, it's like the Ulbrecht gender dysphoria scale or something like that. I forget the exact name. This measure is a sexed measure, right? So you give one measure to males, one measure to females. It's asking you questions like, I feel really uncomfortable when people recognize me as a man. You know, I get upset when I'm expected to do things that men are supposed to do. Having a penis, you know, makes me distressed. Things that are completely sex specific. They do the intervention of puberty blockers. They go on to cross-sex hormones. Many of these people go on to have additional surgeries. They then give them, in their follow-up study, they give them the Ulbrecht gender dysphoria scale, and they just swap sexes. So now females who don't have penises, many of them don't even have phalloplasty, right? So I'm not trying to shit on and say, oh, your phalloplasty is not a penis, although it's a conversation we could have on a separate day. Most of these people didn't have these bottom surgery interventions, and they were being asked questions about, so there you have a female saying, well, no, my penis doesn't cause me stress. No, being identified as a man in public doesn't cause me distress. No, being referred to as he, him doesn't cause me distress. And so they saw
I mean,
a
I'll just
ginormic.
grant you. Sure.
Let me just finish it really quickly.
Well,
So they
sorry, you
saw a
just been talking
ginormic
for like 5
reduction.
minutes. So if I could just jump in and pose you a question, just because you've been cooking for a hot minute, right?
True.
Sure. I'll just grant you that the Dutch model, one of the original measures was poor, right? I'll just grant you that as a psychometrist, right? The issue is that I would be extremely dubious that hasn't been replicated since then with higher quality studies, which my understanding of like life satisfaction measures are vastly different now, because I've looked at a lot of them and they're much more of what I would expect in any life measure standards. They'll use lots of GAF things, all great measures that I'm happy for them to be using. And despite, sure, the Dutch model being the one that we've based it on and the one that maybe has the methodological issue, since then the replications have been done with better quality studies, and we're still consistently seeing we are just seeing a broad amount of evidence, even though you might not like the quality, the broad evidence that we have that is of any level of decent quality is directional to suggest that gender affirming care does improve quality of life, it does reduce distress, and it does reduce dysphoria by and large, although there are cases where this isn't the case and it's not as robust as maybe we would like it to be, which is typically the finding with any care measure, by the way. DMT was fucking everything, and we thought it would cure PTSD until we started doing it all the time. We realized, well, the effect is a little bit more in between. which is to be expected in standard of cares. So the Dutch
And then
model
we
being
walked it back. And then we walk back. It's similar to
No, we
like, and again, I
didn't.
don't. It's
We
such an
did hold on. No, you did not walk back DMT treatment at all. DMT treatment is still offered all the time. Ketamine treatment is an extremely
Is it a
pervasive
first
thing.
line? It's not a first line treatment for depression.
It was never a first line treatment for anything, and it was never purported to be.
Okay, well, again, so sure, but gender affirming care is the first line treatment for trans healthcare, and we're seeing similar low to moderate levels of evidence for the efficacy of these interventions. It's like
Therapy
lobotomies.
and
Again,
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. When you look at the WebPath recommendation, it recommends therapy and social transition long before you go through any medical procedures. And the puberty blockers
this doesn't happen.
The puberty blockers have never been treated as gender affirming care. They've exclusively been used for the wait and watch method to ensure that there is more time for all of the other interventions that are
Can't
non-invasive.
wait to get into that
be
part.
Effective or not effective, right? And so the idea, like, okay, go ahead and respond.
Okay.
Well, okay,
You
so
both were
puberty
trying to get
blockers
in.
are
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. I just want to make sure
blockers are
Aaron gets a
just
chance
absolutely-
too. So
Yeah, Aaron's used to me talking over him all the
Okay.
time. Puberty blockers are absolutely part of gender affirming care. So I hear what you're saying. They have different.
I said that they're not part of gender affirming care. I said that they are not specifically gender affirming in their care. They are used
Sure,
in the gender
absolutely.
affirming care spectrum as a wait and watch perspective. It is a window to give space for the kiddos to have other non-invasive interventions first.
So, okay, so I understand what you're saying. That distinction is absolutely correct. We don't expect dysphoria to go away when someone goes on puberty blockers the same way we might expect it when they go on HRT. So I think that's the point you're making, and I completely agree. We have a few problems with puberty blockers. There's actually, again, I'm against youth intervention full stop, but there's actually evidence to suggest that the safer path for even youth, basically, who are severely sex distressed, would be to go straight on to monotherapy HRT and to not do puberty blockers. We have, hold on, let me just get the
That's
thought
Taylor.
out.
You're just citing Cass. But the issue is that
I'm
the way
not,
that
no,
the
no,
Cass,
I'm not just,
yeah,
I'm
90%,
really,
98% of people that go on puberty blockers go on to get transition therapy, right? That's the position that we're moving
yes, but
towards.
okay, yeah, hold on. Yes, but that's not the reason I made that claim. So that's another claim that I was going to make. So yeah, so the idea behind puberty blockers was time to wait. There's an excellent book about this by Hannah Barnes. She's a BBC journalist in the UK who wrote about all of this going on in the UK, basically. Her book is called Time to Think, and that is what puberty blockers were set out to do, to give a young person time to think before they make such a huge, potentially life-altering decision, let them figure out what their gender identity is, and give them a pause on puberty before their body starts making its own irreversible changes through puberty, right? That was the desired goal.
Yeah.
What they
Can I just grant
found
Tali, real
is
quick,
that
Tali, can I just grant you, like, obviously it's not considered gender affirming care, but if you want to talk about the way that puberty blockers are used in the sense that going through puberty might exacerbate some sort of gender dysphoria, I understand why people call it that, even though that they're like semantically they are different. Like, that's fine.
I
Like,
consider it gender affirming care. Yeah, I'm not trying to nitpick so much with the terms, but so that was the intent, was to give kids time to care, time to think. We have no evidence that it actually did that, right? If anything, it seems like it plays as the first step in the intervention, right? And so in the UK, where they actually have centralized information and they can measure this stuff, all but one kid who was started on puberty blockers went on to cross-sex hormones and to transition. And
but is
so
that the
that
first step,
far,
Tali? The first step was not the first medical step. Might have been puberty blockers, but before that, there are
sure,
therapized,
but that's so
like,
far
like
beyond my
that-
point.
Well, no, because
it's
you're
not.
acting like it's just this thing that you're going right away and not, hey, before you do any of this stuff, you've got a team of psychologists and doctors that are making sure that you even should go on this at all, right? Like,
No,
I
so that's not
Aaron,
true.
hold on,
True,
Aaron, you're shaking your head,
especially
but hold
for
on,
puberty blockers, because of the time constraints, especially for puberty blockers, that because of the time constraints, they want to start you on it. And a lot of these kids are not coming in at 10 or stage 2. They're not coming in at 8 and 9 years old. They're coming in at
Okay,
12, 13,
but
14
is
years
the
old. They may have already
implication
started puberty.
is the implication, because maybe this is true, and I don't believe this to be the case, that these kids in the UK, in the system where it's studied well, because Aaron, I saw you shaking your head, and I understand there might be places, because this is not as robust and connected in the United States, where they don't have these checks in certain places. I understand that, but in the UK, is the
A
case
ton
that
of
people
places, yeah.
are going in and like within weeks, they're just like, bam, puberty blockers, no other sort of analysis whatsoever. Like, oh, you said this, okay, I believe you. Here you go. I don't think that's what's happening, but maybe you can tell me that's wrong.
In the U.S., it's within the same day. You show up, you say I'm trans, and puberty
again,
blockers are
Aaron,
all they can do.
I understand that might be the case
UK.
in
You're
certain
asking
places.
about
I'm
the UK.
asking about the UK specifically for the study that Tali is referencing first.
So in the UK, they ran into a very serious problem of basically they had a shortage of clinicians to deal with this problem, and a huge boom in the number of kids who were coming into their clinics. And so their standards, their protocol was supposed to be a much longer thing, like you're talking about 6 months or whatever of therapy and stuff. And so oftentimes, time-wise, that is what was given. So it would be 6 months to a year or something of waiting. But because of the wait list to get into these clinics and because of how busy their schedules were, these doctors may have only seen them for a total of 1 hour in a full year period before they were given these interventions. And so it might, in a lot of the cases, it satisfied the time requirement, but not the way the time requirement was written into the protocol, right? The protocol was that you're actually having therapeutic intervention, that you're having a thorough assessment, and not because these doctors wanted to hurt anybody, but because they literally didn't have enough people. They didn't have enough time in their day or enough people on their staff to adequately service all these kids.
Okay, so even if I'm willing to grant you that this is the case for some of these people, what I'm seeing
You should
is,
read the book. It's
hold
excellent.
on. Well, let me just I'm just trying to axiomatically follow the train of logic here and tell me if this doesn't make sense to me.
Sure.
So let's say that maybe this is not as strenuous as you would like it, and maybe if that's the case, it's not as strenuous as I would like it. But all of these kids who did go on these puberty blockers, you said only one of them was not then followed through with a higher level of gender affirming care past that. And then also additionally to that, when surveyed these people to say low regret rates and positive effects on them. So maybe there are some incongruencies and bad things happening here, but it all seems to lay it out as, hey, these people got what they wanted and they're very happy about it. I'm very confused as to the
So
what
if
is
we're just
wrong
giving
here.
people what they want so that they'll be happy, again, I'm okay with that. That's more in line of the true informed consent model that I'm pushing for, but that's not how it's being built. It's being built as life-saving medical interventions based on some recognizable medical diagnosis. So yeah, if the standard is if people want this, they should be able to get it, then we're satisfying that standard. But that's not the standard that these people are purporting to hold themselves to. And so yes, only one person out of all of the kids that they saw who went on puberty blockers didn't go on to cross-sex hormones. This already is a huge difference from what they saw in the Dutch protocol and even what they do in the Netherlands today, where they said something like a third of kids that they assess and that go on puberty blockers, they do not put forth to the next step. Another problem is we don't have any type of rigorous assessment. And so it is literally, if the person is insistent enough, that is what we follow. You are literally not allowed in many places in the UK and the United States, you are not allowed to challenge someone's self-report because the identity factor has come in and started to play a large role here. And so
Can you
we
elaborate on
have
that? What do
all
you
of
mean by
these.
you can't challenge? Like you're not allowed to question whether or not they have gender
Yeah, you could
dysphoria when
literally
trying
get
to
in trouble with
diagnose
your
them?
supervisor and be taken off the case. There's lots of reports of
Affirmation
this.
is the only option.
Correct.
It's all.
Well,
it's all
hold
they're
on,
allowed to
hold
do.
on. That's not the way that we should be phrasing this. I would agree that you cannot be pushing back because conversion therapy has such a nasty reputation for good reasons, by the way. Which, by the way, if you guys want conversion therapy to be effective, you should be mad at conversion therapy fuckers for being so fucking evil this entire time, right? The reason why their pushback model is so hated is because it was so abusive for so long. And so it's not affirmation. It's almost exclusively exploratory. A therapist would also potentially lose their license if they had a client come in who said, I'm not sure what gender I am. And they go, you're probably trans, right? And so that's not what's happening either. What they're having is exploratory therapy, which, to be clear, is most standard therapy because it's not
No one's
diagnostic.
having exploratory therapy. Almost no one. Kyla, I wish they were.
What do you think I mean when I say exploratory therapy?
Exploring where are these feelings coming from? Talk to me about your life. When did these feelings start? Have you considered other things? Have you experienced any types of traumas? What's your relationship history like? Taking a holistic look at the person, trying to understand where their dysphoria is coming from, how stable it is in their life, how distressing it is to them, and if they're a good fit for treatment. That's what exploratory therapy should be, and there's no version of that happening in the overwhelming majority of clinics.
I don't see evidence for that. I would grant you. I don't see evidence that
exploratory therapy. Hold on, Kyla.
You
The
gotta let
irony
me
here is exploratory.
Tali, breathe. You gotta let me talk. You gotta let me talk.
Sure.
What I'm saying is I don't see good evidence for this. While I believe that there are absolutely going to be licensed mental health practitioners that are stupid and bad at their job and are just there to yes man their clients, by and large, that's viewed as a very bad thing to do. And most supervisors, even supervisors in very LGBTQ affirming spaces, are not going to necessarily go around and tell you that you are indeed trans. As somebody, again, I have lots of anecdotes of trans people in my community as well who have gone to therapy. And most of their therapy as people exploring their gender identity was exploratory in nature. That, like, I have multiple friends that went for almost 2 years before they decided whether they're going to transition or not. And these individuals, one of them decided not to, and one of them did. But they were given, I helped them find LGBTQ, gender affirming care, gender affirming therapists, and the therapist sat with them and let them figure it out for themselves, because therapists aren't rushing to get you transed. They're not. And some are. There are some bad actors, because there are always political bad actors. But the issue is that most of them are not doing this. They are doing the exploratory thing, even if they probably have some level of bias of never wanting to say, no, maybe you're not trans. And I would agree they should be allowed to do that too. I agree with you in that regard. But the idea that, like, everyone is getting people into their clients and just being like, yeah, you must be trans, is just not really borne out. And that's not really what therapy looks like ever.
So yeah. I've attended multiple conferences for gender affirming therapists and other gender affirming healthcare practitioners, and the therapy you're describing just does not happen. They're not allowed to do it. The only thing that they are allowed to do is, this person says I am trans. From that moment, your job as the therapist is to help them facilitate their transition. That is it. There's not any sort of any exploration around this person's experience is framed in terms of their adverse life experiences due to their transness, due to living in a cis-normative society that is constantly oppressing them and invalidating them. Everything is tailored around cultivating and affirming the trans identity and facilitating the medical process. That is what they are taught their job is. I was at the psychological, what's that? The American Academy?
The APA?
Anyway, no. Yes, the APA. Yeah, and as they were developing the guidelines for treating gender, I think they're calling gender diverse patients, and that's literally what they were. Everything was affirm, affirm, affirm. I asked, again, my standard question: how do you determine, which person is, like a gender nonconforming cis person and which is a gender nonconforming trans person? And they told me only a transphobe would ask that question. There's no answer to actually doing an assessment. They're not allowed to actually do assessments. It's just, you're trans, great, let's get you transitioned.
And I wanna follow up to the people that you're talking about, Kyla, for example, the anecdotes that I do take seriously. I think it's very likely, especially if they're your friends, that they are thoughtful, curious people, and the exploration that they did was patient-led. They wanted to delve into their psyche and understand why they're feeling these things and if this is going to be the right path for them. But the overwhelming, again, this is just what's happening. So there are obviously people who are bucking this trend. If you go into more conservative or even anti-trans places, yeah, they're a lot less likely to just affirm you. That's absolutely true. I don't deny this at all. There's going to be older psychologists and therapists, like generationally, like boomers, who are just not up to date on this stuff, and they're going to be more likely to explore or whatever. There are a growing number of gender critical therapists who have their own biases against any type of transition, and they're more likely to do explorative therapy. But if you want proof that exploratory therapy, this is not great proof, so this is a little tongue in cheek, but if you want proof that exploratory therapy is not happening regularly in trans-affirmative healthcare, go into a trans community and ask them what they think about exploratory therapy. Exploratory therapy is a slur in trans communities. It is a slur synonymous with conversion therapy. I'm not being hyperbolic. I wish I were being hyperbolic, but I'm not.
Just to be clear, I'm not here to defend crazy trans communities. I'll be the first to tell you that trans communities are fucking crazy, right? Lots of people.
But the crazy trans communities have infiltrated WPATH and the APA.
Correct.
The issue
Wait,
is that
can I-
WPATH and the APA have third-party things that they are required to be honoring to, that they can't just do insane shit all the time, or they're going to be liable for it. If it is the
The
case that all
the
these
WPATH does not
kids
have
that
any type of
I'm
accreditation.
just going to
that
talk over you now,
anyone-
Tali, if you keep talking over me all the time. If it is the case that WPATH and the APA are just doing all these things that are definitionally harmful to children, that the desistance rates would be so much higher if we allowed it to be, the reality is that the evidence would be there. We would be finding this at large numbers, because when institutions fail at such a massive degree and such a large scale, you see the effects of it. You can see this when you look at there was multiple studies on workers that didn't have access to safety gear that were getting major cancers and health issues within 2 to 5 years of working there, right? When there are systemic issues at a system level that are failing people, you will see evidence of it. And I'm not saying that trans communities aren't fucking insane. I agree with that. In fact, they don't like my position either, and I'm obviously very pro them. So I'm not going to be here defending them and saying any of this shit. I wouldn't be surprised that APA conferences are saying this shit, because holy fuck, I would never be at a conference as an APA person and say anything but that, because they're fucking cowards. But this doesn't mean that this is what it looks like in the practice. Sure, it is probably the case that the people in my community are going to be selection biased to be more interested in thinking in general, and I'll just grant you that. But if what was happening right now was so bad and was harmful to people in such a significant way, I think that we would see these numbers. I think we would be seeing the effects of this. And that's the thing that I'm not seeing.
Okay. So first of all, this has been a pretty robust debate. It's mostly calm, actually, but we got a little spice there at the end. I've got some super chats to go through, and then we're going to close out and get to closing statements, and everyone can have their final arguments and tell people where to find you. But we're not ending the stream after we end the panel, because apparently Israel has started striking at Iran's nuclear facilities, and we're going to cover that a little bit. So stay
Wowie.
tuned for that, okay? And if you guys
So I get your menorah out.
Yeah, channel the dreidel powers and stuff like that. Okay.
Look, Iran and Israel can hash it out. I don't fucking...
But let's read some of these super chats and discuss them, and we'll get through it. $10 from Greg Yo to say, could the panel explain a bit about how the medical process works? How many doctors are involved? What interventions are recommended and when? What sort of support and counseling is available, etc.? Thank you for the $10. I think we've covered that excessively during this debate. Thank you.
In that chatter's defense, it does vary by country, by city, that's why
Like
it's
clinic
not always
down the road.
Yeah, and clinic, right? So it's it's not always 2 doctors and 2 therapies, right? This is very different for a bunch of very different things, and that's why there's never really one answer for this. And maybe there should be, or maybe you can kind of get that way, move closer to something, but there isn't a solid one. So
okay.
Typically, there's multiple standards. I even looked up the American process. By and large, you can't get hormones same day, especially as teens, right? Typically, you have to go through multiple checks of approval. They might argue that the checks of approval are insufficient and biased, and I think that's totally fine. But there just are these obstacles to overcome, and I would suspect that the obstacles and the wait times that exist, even in America, that are pretty astronomical alone, are going to probably account for why some of the people who finally get on the puberty blockers are probably already selection biased for the people who are already most likely to want to transition the full way through. Not that I think just delay of care should be the process by which we're vetting out people. I would agree that there should be higher protocol of vetting out people, and I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't where I would like it to be, particularly with teens.
Okay. £5 from Jacob Buckingham. Probably the most British name we have. Says this, nice to see a discussion that isn't the typical it's immoral or delusion you get from the Daily Wire types. Thanks to all of you. Well, thank you, James Buckingham. $10 from Alexander Rinn to say, does the social pressure against studies that found negative results from transition exist in other areas of medicine?
I think it's hard to compare those things. I'm sure that they do exist, but the politicization of transness is not really comparable to a lot of other medical things. I think vaccines would be maybe the closest thing, and again, it's an argument for being anti-intellectual. Like, yeah, you do see sometimes that people won't release data that they might think would hurt a community, but the reason it comes out is because it's not like they just burn all the files. It's like, hey, we're not going to like go to all the like science journalists, or hey, like we might not make as big of a stink about this, and not, oh, like every single study that shows that actually the suicidality isn't going down, the quality of life isn't going down. They just like throw all those away because they're scared of hurting the trans community. I don't believe that's happening. Although there obviously is bias in this to an extent.
$5. Oh, I'm sorry, $10 from Alexander Wren. He gave me another $10. Thank you. How do you expect kids to figure things out if puberty blockers are also slowing or blocking brain development?
Great question.
My understanding of the evidence of like the stopping brain development is a little bit like wishy-washy. I don't actually know to what degree it's actually stopping brain development. And the idea, again, you would have to show that even if there's like brain development being delayed, if there is it specifically in a way that's irreversible? And secondly, is it in a way that would presumably make us believe that they can't make decisions about their gender, right?
Yeah, like
You can be
specifically
like
frontal lobe or something. Like,
10-year-olds can make decisions on things that 14-year-olds can and can't, right? Like there's things we allow 10-year-olds to approve to because 10-year-olds can understand it. So like the brain development alone, I don't think is like fully sufficient. And again, not sure if there's evidence for what you're saying.
Well, and I think there's truth to the idea that like different people have varying levels of cognitive abilities. And this is a conversation that I have with a young trans friend of mine who is pro youth intervention. And she says all the time, like if a 16-year-old is cognitively able to consent and to understand the risks, that should be good enough. And while I understand that, I think that's somewhat compelling, it's still the fact that they are like too young to make these decisions for the rest of their life, especially if we're talking about things like foregoing fertility and things like this into the future. So my concern is still not just about how smart any one individual young person is, but the long-term implications that time allows you to consider.
Okay. $5 from Audacity to say, yeah, we're exploring therapy, all right. Exploring around till we find the doctor that agreed to give us the treatment we want. Thank you for the $5.
I just want to say,
Well,
like, the way that
that's
some
not
of
a
these people are
trans unique issue.
yeah, I was
Let's
gonna
be
say
clear.
the way that people are making it sound with the trans stuff, and I don't think this is borne out, is like, I don't know if anyone here lived in California back before 2018 when weed was legalized, but you had these like clinics on Venice Beach that were like, it's a doctor, and I guess they were medically licensed, who would just, you go in and you'd be like, my back hurts, and they're like, cool, here's your weed card. And I don't think this is the way that this is happening with trans people, or at least I haven't seen the evidence of that. Although maybe people do shop around because they really care about getting their gender affirming care, and some people push back more than the ones that they would otherwise want. I don't know.
Okay. $10. And this is from Alexander Wren to Not So Erudite directly. Say, at Not So Erudite, what percentage of the therapists that are going to be highly recommended are going to be doing proper therapy versus pushing them towards exploring transness?
I don't even know if there's like data that we would know the answer to that. And I don't know what you even mean by highly recommended. Highly recommended by APA, then they're probably real decently scrupulous because the APA is recommending them. Highly recommended by like your local trans mom, probably less scrupulous. That would be my suspicion.
Okay. And then finally, $5 from Minerva's Miscellaneous. Exploratory therapy, quote unquote, can often be a Mott and Bailey for let's search for trauma forever and never allow you HRT access, end quote. Thank you for the $5. Okay, with that said, and with that gone through, I'd like to thank everyone for this debate. If you've enjoyed this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We got some great stuff. And again, we're not ending the stream after the conclusion, so don't go away. What we got coming up? So on tomorrow, I have a twofer. Irrelevant versus Admiral Gibbs, and Tali will be joining me. She's going to be co-hosting this. And we're going to be debating riots and the LA riot situation. That should be fun. On Sunday, we have Hutch coming on with Staxiums, and they're going to be fighting against Charlie and her friend, who think that the violence and the looting is perfectly acceptable. And people pushing back against it are just soy boys. Sorry, no offense, Soy Pill, right?
I have to make a call after this. I didn't know Charlie was on that side. Yeah.
So, yeah, well, she is. But we're going to talk about it. So tune in, and it's going to be great. And that's what we got. But I'm going to give Aaron the first word, Soy Pill the last word. Aaron, close us out. Tell people where we can find you. And what are your closing thoughts on this? Go ahead, please.
You can find me mostly on X, formerly Twitter, as Allegation Vein. I also have a Substack that I'm not super active on lately, and then also the Naval Gaze podcast that Tali and I do together. Final words is just, I think before we kind of move further in what it is that what should be provided as far as trans-affirming healthcare, we should find out what trans even is. And I'd just like to request research into what gender dysphoria is, what it is these doctors are treating, because they don't know. They're just prescribing because that's all they're allowed to do.
Okay, well, thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it. Check them out, gang. Not so erudite, please.
Yeah. It's trans your kids, guys. My name is Not So Erudite. You can find me everywhere at Not So Erudite. YouTube, Twitch, Kick, all the like, Twitter, and in your mom's bedroom, at least every Thursday.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here, and appreciate you. Go check her out, gang. She's great. Links to all these people are in my YouTube description. Tali, please.
Thank you guys for a great discussion. Kyla, I'm sorry for talking over you so much. It's a bad habit of mine. But hopefully we can talk again. I would love to go even further into this with you if you're interested. I think you're a very competent person to discuss all this stuff with. The reason I was so excited for this conversation, and one of the reasons I think it went really well, is because so much of this conversation is had by the freaks and the bigots and the extremists, right? Kyla, you commented on how a lot of trans activists can be really crazy, and a lot of the anti-trans activists are really crazy. Even the ones who call themselves feminists, even the ones who call themselves pro-gay and stuff like that. People have lost their fucking minds, which is why Aaron and I really don't have friends in the gender critical space much anymore. So I'm desperately trying to reclaim this conversation by moderate, sensible people who care about the well-being of trans people, so that we can get to an end state that is optimal for all people with gender dysphoria. Something we didn't get to talk about much is the fact that a lot of people with gender dysphoria can live happy, satisfied lives without a full transition. There are people who just take HRT but live in their birth sex. There are people who really can sort of accommodate with a social transition minus the change of pronouns and stuff like this. And these are all things that really should be explored if we're looking at the best possible outcomes for dysphoric and trans people.
Okay, thanks for being here, gang. You can check her out on the Naval Gaze and my show, where we host a show probably every week. So we don't have a name for it. If you want to give a name for it, please suggest good ones because we can't think of one. Last but certainly not least, the man, the myth, the legend, Soy Pill. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Soy Pill. I make video essays. You can find me on YouTube, apparently Twitch now because I co-stream, and Twitter, the only acceptable thing to dead name. I just want to say thank you to everyone here. This was probably the best and last most good faith debate I've ever had, where everyone was very vehemently engaging, acknowledging the points of the other people and clarifying, and no one was mean or rude, and everyone was listening. This is never going to happen again. This is like a miracle, lightning in a bottle. It's like the Lord of the Rings film. So I appreciate you guys. And sorry, chat, that I didn't scream at anyone. But yeah, my points really haven't changed from the intro. I still have yet to see the evidence that this is some horrible, harmful thing that is happening. I think it's great that we all agree that there should be good checks to making sure that anything that could otherwise cause harm because it's not reversible does have some sort of exploratory therapy or some sort of like medical assessment, which is hard because it's a medical thing, or it's a thing in your brain. So it's going to be a difficult thing, but I'm glad that at least everyone on this panel agrees that to some degree, these people are happier and these people should be able to get this care. It should not be barred forever. Maybe it should be harder in certain circumstances. That's cool. I'm very happy. Kyla, I agree. Trans communities are insanely based. I'll say that because they're all so cool. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Rick, for having me.
Okay, thanks for being here, gang. I'm going to move you all out. Soypill just called my panel boring, but thanks for being here anyway. And I'll see you guys when I see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, did you like that show? Did you like that debate? Did you like the good faith? Or do you prefer the blood sports? Let me know. I prefer this style, honestly. I know that you guys don't, for the most part, right? I know that you guys want the blood. I know that you guys want the yelling and the screaming and all that, right? That's what makes me more money. But look, if I had my way, if I could just like snap my fingers, okay, and choose everyone's preferences and what I get the most money, I would prefer stuff like this. That's what I like to do. These are the kind of discussions that I like to have. But most of my audience, I don't know, again, the most money I make is when they're all yelling and they're all screaming at each other, okay? That's when I make most of my money. I don't know what else to say. Give me a second. Let me make one message, and then let me pull up some video, actually, of the strikes that the IDF is currently carrying out in Iran. Because if you guys missed it, Iran is under attack by Israel. Israel is conducting airstrikes against this nuclear facility. I'm not sure yet the extent. This might be a very short after stream, right? But we are going to, as I've been informed, right, that there are attacks happening right now. We're going to look into the extent, and we're looking into everything like that. Iran strikes. I'm going to ask Tali if she wants to join us. I don't know if she does. But we'll see. Oh, $10 from Alexander Wynn to say, at Wick TV, that was the best debate I've seen in a long time. Screw the blood sports. Like, if you like this kind of stuff, you have to reward me for it monetarily. Frankly. $10 from Michael Dale to say, poor you. Here's a few bucks for hosting Sane People. Well, thank you, Michael Dale. Really appreciate it. Really do. It's fun. It's nice. Up to you if you want. Sorry, I'm just DMing back and forth with some people, see if they want to jump in. This was not planned, okay? One moment. One moment. If you want. Okay, let me pull up some of this stuff. Here's some footage. Okay, we're going to look at the footage. You guys can see this? Okay. Israel's attacking Iran. This is visuals from Tehran. Let's go through it. Let's see what they see what they have, and let's see what's happening. Okay. It's a pretty big mushroom cloud there, right? A pretty big smoke. A lot of smoke from these attacks. What I'm curious about, and maybe you guys can inform me, and I'm just uninformed on this. How extensive are these strikes? How targeted are these strikes? Okay. I don't actually know. I don't actually know how targeted these things are. Is that not a video? It's just a picture of the area. I'm just really curious how targeted these strikes are. Is this more full scale? Anything like that? I don't actually know. We do have an article from the Times of Israel. IDF is confirming the launching of aerial campaign against Iran's nuclear program. The IDF confirms it has launched an aerial campaign against Iran's nuclear program. Dozens of targets across Iran related to the nuclear program and other military facilities are being struck by the Israeli Air Force, it says. The operation is dubbed Nation of Lions. The IDF says Iran has enough enriched uranium to build several bombs within days, and it needs to act against this imminent threat. Sirens that sounded across Israel a short while ago were a preemptive warning issued by the IDF ahead of a possible reaction by Iran. Iran. Fuck, I don't know how to pronounce these words, gang. You never judge me on my pronunciations, but... So, the claim here being made and this is something we've been trying to avoid. The United States have been trying to avoid for years. Is Iran getting access to enriched uranium enough to make bombs? Israel is claiming, okay, that they have enough to make several bombs within days. I guess the question I have for you guys, okay, and you guys can tell me what you think. So first of all, thank you for the gift, one gift membership, Campbell. Really appreciate you. To Hayward Driver, you're welcome, Hayward Driver. Right? Thank Campbell, if you will. How important is it to you, dear viewer, that we keep Iran from having a nuclear weapon? Personally, my personal opinion is that Iran being a nuclear-capable state is probably a very, very bad thing. We don't want that to happen. There are several reasons we don't want that to happen, not least of which is that Iran is an enemy of the United States. I don't know if we've officially designated them as such, but they act against our interests in the area. They have spent billions of dollars arming and aiding rebel groups and groups like Hamas throughout the region. Third-party actors that they use as puppets to expand their influence and expand their will. And this is often goes counter to the American interests in the region. And for that reason alone, I think it's well within our interest to keep them from getting a nuclear weapon. Them being a nuclear-capable state is just bad for everyone. Okay. What am I clicking on here? No cow Mike. Oh, okay. So this has nothing to do with it. So send me stuff on the Iran and Israel stuff. This is good. Thank you for this. Basically, the judge has ordered Trump to return control of the National Guard back to California, saying the call-up was illegal. But this is going up to the Supreme Court, gang. It's just going to go up. So in the meantime, just watch the back and forth, right, between the judges. One saying, yes, he can. One saying, no, he can't. One saying, yes, he can. One saying, no, he can't. Supreme Court's going to have to be the one that says what it says, okay? So if you have any information on the IDF and the strikes or Iran's nuclear program, by all means. Tiberius wants to talk for a minute, so give me a second. Let me pull him in if he wants in. Hello, you're live.
How's it going?
Okay, what are your thoughts here? Nuclear-armed Iran. First of all, how accurate how honest is the IDF being here? When the Israel says that they have enough enriched uranium, they being Iran, has enough enriched uranium to make bombs within days. How believable is that to you? Go ahead.
Yeah, there's 3 levels here that I want to hit. First one, just being my general bias, I'm semi-pro-Israel. Like, they're not our best friends by any measure, but I like them more than most of their neighbors, right? So we'll just level that as my bias.
Just real quick, $5. I just need to make a little money. $5 from Jordan Rogers to say, Wick, I do not like yelling and screaming. Brownie face, be more chill, smoke more weed, talk to PF Young, SFO, Sitch and Adam, whatever this means. Look, all those people you just listed are more than happy to come and hop on my stream anytime they want, to invite me on their stream anytime they want. Problem is that they don't usually. Like, the last time I was on Sitch and Adam was a year ago, and I like Sitch and Adam. They follow me. They're good guys. But they just don't, I don't know, maybe I'm boring content. I don't know. But I would be happy to talk to them more. But go ahead, Tiberius.
You're good. Yeah, so bias out of the way. Let's do consistency. They've not been consistent. Israel has been saying that Iran is within at least a couple of years, within a nuclear bomb, and that's been going back since, 95? Like, my entire life, they've been claiming this. There's a certain part where, even if it was true, there's kind of a, you've cried wolf too many damn times. And then the other part here is that, how practical is it? Well, I don't get CIA briefs unless somebody's being very naughty. Is it semi-practical?
Well, unless Hegseth got it, and then he's on a signal chat, right? And then you might get it. There's
just a little bit,
zero
right?
chance of you
not
having
zero
access.
chance. Yeah, so anyway, I don't get the CIA briefs, but at least from the general, like what's been conveyed to me, is it possible? Yes. Is it plausible? Certainly. Is it probable? 50-50 shot, right? Like, is this a state that can make nuclear weapons? 1,000 fucking percent. Like, well, that is absolutely, like, if you throw enough shit at the wall, sooner or later you're gonna get it. It's 1940 stack, right?
Yeah.
But is it one of those things that they're actually actively striving for? Well, they've got new political leadership. It seems to be kind of moderate, so I don't see the aggression coming out to where it's like, oh yeah, we're just going to build nukes next week. I think this is the reality of what happened after the collapse of Syria. This is Israel having the opportunity to finally strike at somebody they have been wanting to for a long time. They're going for the throat because they can. And if Israel is able to wipe the board in a state that they like, they don't have to do shit for 30 years and they can camp.
Well, when you say wipe the board, right? So,
yeah.
Again, according to Israel and according to reports, whether that's accurate or not, we'll find out. This is breaking. They are saying that these are being specifically targeted against specifically their nuclear program. Would you consider that wiping the board? I don't know if I would, because even without a nuclear armament, right? Iran without a nuclear armament has been a thorn in Israel's side for years, right?
Yeah.
And will continue to be.
Don't disagree with that, right? So when I say wiping the board is that there's a level where I'm being a little hyperbolic, but let's take stock of all the enemies that the Israelis have had to deal with over the last 70 years. They're largely now down to one. As far as geopolitics, and then everybody else is just on their border, right? This is Hezbollah and Hamas. But Egypt's been pacified since Camp David, right, in 79. Syria has now collapsed. The Jordanians are now relatively friendly. The Saudis are now relatively friendly, or at least they get along. It really is just a situation where Iran is the only one left. And let's be real, if the calculus is, I'm going to get thrown missiles my way every now and again anyway, let's make sure they're not nuclear tipped. I think that's an easy call.
Interesting. No, I don't disagree with anything you say. This is a problem with breaking news, is we don't know how accurate this information is. This is what we're being told, but whether or not they are being honest is, as you said, they have a history. Like, first of all, never 100% trust any government, even your own, right? Never 100% trust. Wait.
Especially within the intelligence agencies.
Exactly, right? That doesn't mean, though, and I think some people err too much on the side of caution here, that you could just throw out the government said it and you believe the government. Well, the government doesn't always lie, right? The government, I would even argue that the government is usually honest. It's just when they lie, it's a whopper, right? It's a big one and it matters. Do you think let me ask you this.
Yeah.
With the current tensions into Israel, in the area, right, with Israel and its continuing ongoing operation in Gaza and things like that, and as you said, it strikes in Syria and its issues there. Do you feel like Iran will use this as an excuse to kind of escalate? What I mean by that is...
wait, hold on. Yeah, go ahead and finish that.
Sure.
Sorry.
What I mean by that is, obviously, Israel is escalating at this point, right? But the tit for tat thing comes into play, and will Iran use this as an excuse to do anything more than what they usually do, which is this? Last time this happened, right? They sent a bunch of drones and a bunch of missiles and stuff, and it was showy, but it didn't really do.
They literally told us where they were going to land.
Yeah, it didn't really do anything, right?
I don't know on this one, because this is direct strikes on Iran. That's usually something that really pisses off an acting government, is whenever bombs are going off within your own native territory. It's been one thing where they've lost their own nationals in like their embassies, right? That happened in Lebanon not too long ago, but now it's on their soil. Like, this is one of those, like, I think they have to respond in an actual manner, but we got to be real. Iran's not in a good space right now. They've had hyperinflation, or at least mega inflation, for quite a long time now, for better part of most of COVID. The economy's kind of in the shitter. They don't have very many friends outside of the Russians, and the Russians are busy. And and they hate the Russians anyway. Like it's just who's on the friends list. No one, nowhere, and has been right. This is I think this is Israel just trying to punch the clock. Hey, cool. Every opportunity is here. We're gonna do it.
Yeah,
there's sense. No. This is a no lose scenario for us.
Yeah. I do think Iran has to do something. The question becomes what? How do they? Are they going to respond like last time, right? Where it was basically saber rattle. And to be clear, in the recent, I'd say decade, that's generally been Iran's play. They talk a big game, but it's saber rattling for the most part, and they'll do something showy, but it won't actually matter, right?
It's a bunch of work to appease the imams, right?
Yes. It's one of those things. It's more important to their internal politics than it is to the larger world stage. I just don't know if they can keep that up. I think there comes to a point where they have to do something that's actual. Will this be it? I don't know. It's all speculation, but I think that we are getting closer to that point. We'll see. Right.
I'm definitely with you that we're hitting a fine line. This is one of those that I don't think they can just ignore. I don't think they can just walk this one off. The crazy political calculus in my head, and granted, this is assuming people aren't desperate or very pissed off, is we'll throw something back, but no matter what we do, we don't win this confrontation. So we can go down swinging. Basically, is the conversation.
I don't think this leads to anything like an invasion, right? I don't think we see any real play on that end of things. I think it continues.
Neither of them can get at each other,
right?
Like that's just the rub, right? Iran and Israel are, I think, at their closest point, something like 400 miles apart.
Yeah, they're not contiguous. What's the word? Contiguous.
Contiguous.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah. They're not connected like that, right? So yeah, I just don't see what Iran does now. If Iran actually does have or is capable of building a bomb, and Iran and Israel strikes do not sufficiently degrade their capabilities, and Iran does become nuclear capable, how do you think that the board changes? What happens next? Iran now announces, hey, we're a nuclear capable country now. We have nuclear missiles that are capable of being launched to hit everyone within 1,000-mile radius or whatever the fuck, right? Like, what changes?
I have a theory, or I haven't gamed this one out yet because I didn't really consider it a lot, but it is an option, right? It's kind of the big red button option, but it's a lot of ways sensible because you can go, all right, hey, look, we detonate one off in the desert because there's plenty of room. We proved to the world we have nuclear weapons now. Whether they can actually put it on top of a missile is going to be argued, but if they claim it, right? They're just like, hey, Israel, we don't appreciate your shit, and we're not going to take it. The next time you bomb us, we're throwing one of these back at you. That could be the play. Does that change the board? Yes, but not as much as people think unless someone actually uses it. And I think we're getting to that real conversation where I think you got to be completely mad to use these weapons. You've got to be crazy. I'm not convinced that the Iranian government is crazy. I just don't agree with their morals and their ethics.
Yeah.
Israel already has nuclear weapons, or at least we believe they have. They've never used one, so like the worst actual Armageddon scenario is that Iran announces that they have a nuclear weapon and Israel throws one. That's the ultimate nightmare scenario, but I don't think it's likely.
I'm looking right now for more information. I don't see.
It's a slow trickle.
New.
Major Western media hasn't gone onto it, from what I've seen.
CNN's covering it.
Oh, did they finally announce it?
Yes. Netanyahu says it will continue for many days. This is a quote from Netanyahu in a live television address, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. We struck at the head of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. In defending ourselves, we also defend others. We defend our Arab neighbors. They too have suffered from Iran's campaign of chaos and carnage. Iran has yet to comment. So that's where we are.
Yeah.
Well, here's another question.
Go for it.
Does America get involved? And if so, how?
No.
No? You don't think at all?
The only way we get involved at all is that if Iran just goes kind of loco and actually attacks U.S. installations. But they already have enough to deal with Israel. I know there's a lot of like non-interventionist types out there who are like, oh, this is not our fight, it's not our war, but they're actually kind of right. Israel can take care of this themselves. We don't need to be involved. And I think that's going to be the play that the Trump administration uses. But as far as the other the other way around is that there is absolutely no reason for Iran to get involved without making it worse. So I don't think they're going to throw anything at us. But that's the only way that they can have it is they're going to strike U.S. installations within, Iraq, Syria, and wherever we're not talking about.
That would be. I just don't see them doing that. I
don't either.
I'm with you on that. Like that would be. Now, one of the things that they might do is they won't do it directly, but they'll use one of their subsidiaries, right? Like one of the groups that they pay off and things like that, because those have shot missiles at American forces and American locations. And this is a not irregular occurrence that they will fire a missile at a ship that's patrolling off a coast, or they will strike at American forces using drones and things like that in very limited capacities. This is something that happens more than you would think, okay? It's something that's a continuous thing. So I do wonder if that is a play that they make, is they just step up attacks of that nature to a degree that they feel they can without triggering a huge escalatory response from the U.S. So
it's definitely possible, right? But I kind of was talking about this earlier, but even on the small scale, right? Yeah, we're talking about like the dissident groups that Iran likes to buddy up with. There's not very many left anymore, right? We still have the Houthis, but they get an annual, no, sorry, not an annual. They get a semi-consistent bombing every time that they poke their heads out of the ground now. Like, I'm not going to say the United States military is always there, but we're there more than people are let on. Like, that's kind of been a major operation under the Trump administration that no one's talked about. Is just, there's plenty of surveillance now going on. There is active bombing strikes, and we've seen it once or twice in the news. Like, I think we talked about it back in February, or at least, mentioned it. But let me do it. Hezbollah, Lebanon's on the doorstep of civil war. Hamas is literally, I don't know what their theoretical capability is at this point. I don't think anyone knows. I think it's assumed to be low. We already covered the Houthis. Who's left? Almost the rest of the Muslim world hates them, right? Like, even the radicals hate them. This could very well just be one of those situations where Iran literally is just out of cards.
You don't have the cards, Iran. You don't have the cards. It's possible. Okay.
Chat, let me know if I'm wrong, but some of you guys know some crazies out there. Is there any crazies that Iran can buddy up with?
Yep. Let us know. Let us know. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if we have any more information to give, and I think that at this point it's all just this is all the discussion is rampant speculation without enough information. We're basically in wait and see mode. We're waiting to see what the response is from Iran. We're waiting to see how virulent or how excessive or how not excessive necessarily, but how extreme I should say that these strikes are, and I just don't see. I don't know what else to say. Roxfist says this. Do you think this is why anti-Netanyahu Israelis tried to vote down Israeli parliament yesterday? I don't I don't know. I don't know if
That's a wild take to me. Like, could I see it out of like an act of desperation? Possibly. But you're just leaving Netanyahu as effectively, literally the Roman office of dictator he gets to fill without, like the Israeli parliament. Like, holy crap. That's the most self-destructive thing you could probably do.
I don't know. Okay. Well, at this point, boys and girls, I think we're going to sign off. I think we're going to be done for the day. Don't forget, tune in tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow's going to be a long night, gang, because we have 2 back-to-back shows. 6 p.m. Eastern, we're having Irrelevant versus Gibbs on the looting and the rioting and all that, on the protests in LA. And then at 9, I'm going to be going on and co-hosting with Sarah, the Raging Tomato, and it's your chance to debate me and to debate her on things. And if you want to do that, tune in tomorrow. Okay. With that, I bid thee adieu. Signing off. Bye-bye.